Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 19th, 2012 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. If you haven't already noticed, well, at one point in time there were agendas on both sides of the room, so if you'd like to pick up a copy and follow along with our proceedings tonight, I would invite you to do so. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our agenda tonight, as well as items of a general nature, and I'll let you know when you have an opportunity to speak about those items as well. It is customary that we begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point in time, I'd ask everyone to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now if I can please ask our fine village clerk to call the roll.
Commissioner Rankin? Here. Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner Schnell?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of council meeting minutes from our June 12, 2012 meeting to review and approve. Are there any changes or corrections or comments on those minutes from anyone on the council? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes shall be approved as presented. And as promised, that brings us to item 4 on our agenda tonight, which is the segment in which we entertain comments of a general matter with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight. So if anyone has any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not on our agenda tonight, then we would invite you to please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and we'd welcome to hear from you.
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Bill Roble. I live at 7800 Queens Court in the Nottingham subdivision of Downers Grove on the extreme southeast side. And I'm here tonight as a citizen that's very concerned about what's happening in my neighborhood. I sent an email to the council and to the village staff yesterday. Friday or Sunday night, Monday morning, vandals took a long-standing entrance marker and chipped it on its side. Obviously, it was not a collision. It was not an accident. It was deliberate vandalism. And I have made an appeal to you as a council in the village to help me contact the neighbors in my subdivision to work diligently together with the police department and to reach out even to the Darien Police Department, which is adjacent to our subdivision, to put a vigil, a neighborhood watch, or whatever, to try to apprehend these irresponsible citizens or future citizens of Downers Grove, state of Illinois, United States. Obviously, there are people afoot on Father's Day evening who have nothing better to do than to destroy personal property, perhaps public property. I have sent you all pictures. There are no tire tracks. It was absolutely the work of vandals who made a deliberate effort to topple this structure. So that's number one. I wanted to reach out to you and make the residents know this, that summertime and children that should be home are out on the streets, and it could be adult children, who knows, but it's a definite threat to the quality of life here in Downers Grove, and I wanted to address it at a time of public comment. I have another personal thing that I wanted to address also before you. I wasn't prepared to talk to you about it. I have not sent you any emails or correspondence, but and I'm pleased to see that you're addressing our relationships with Commonwealth Edison, because you've done an outstanding job via last summer when we had the outages. This weekend, we had no severe outages that I can tell. We had no severe storms, but I was at home all day Sunday celebrating Father's Day with 2 of my children, and there was an absence of calls from 2 of my children. And that evening I got a text, and it said, Been trying to call you all day, Dad. Your line's been busy. So on Monday morning, I got on the phone with AT&T, which is my provider, got the repair number, and was told that they had my complaint, that it would be addressed by the end of the day on Monday. They also asked for a number where I could be contacted. Gave them a cell phone number where I could be contacted. Tuesday morning, which was this morning, on the line was like a sound. This morning it was a sound. I went to the, but no dial tone. I went to the repair number again, asked for an update of what the situation was. They informed me that a technician had been assigned to my case, that my problem should be solved by Wednesday by 8 p.m. I don't have a problem. I checked my phones in my home. Like most citizens, there's a little box at the back of your house. You can plug a telephone in, see if the signal is coming in or the line is coming into your house. The line was not coming into my house. There was this noise and this distortion. They took the time to tell me on my initial call that if a service person came out, I'd be billed $99 for the service call, regardless if it was in my house or, you know, they exonerate if it was outside. Well, what I'm after is the fact that all day Sunday, my phone was not available to anyone who wanted to call me. I couldn't call out on it. I didn't need to. All day Tuesday, Monday, it's not available. Today it was not available. When I dialed my number before I came into this council meeting, I got a ringing sound. No busy signal, just a ringing sound. In my home, it's a dead silence. It's supposed to be happening tomorrow, but I'm not going to go to the bank that AT&T will have that service to my home. If it was the only phone I had, or I lived in a remote area of Downers Grove, this is an issue of public safety and health and welfare. Why I didn't hear from AT&T? They did ask a number where I could be contacted. They took my number, but it's been complete silence, just like my telephone. Mayor, since you have the expertise of having dialogue with Commonwealth Edison, I would ask you to commission this village staff to see if there are other citizens here in Downers Grove have had similar experiences with AT&T, with interruption of service, with no explanation, or how many people are experiencing it as I am right now. My phone service just stopped. I didn't do anything. It just stopped. 4 days without telephone service, I think, is unconscionable in this day and age without someone from AT&T contacting a citizen.
Well, Mr. Robel, I'm very sorry to hear of your less than desirable circumstances with AT&T. It sounds like not getting you customer service that you deserve. If we are become aware of more than isolated incidents of service like that, then that's something we can look into. I'm not aware of a rash of outages.
I'm not either, but
I know everyone has issues with, hold on a second, with issues with AT&T. We all have issues with various providers. The ComEd situation was a little different in the sense that we were talking about enormous chunks of Downers Grove that were affected all at once on multiple occasions.
Right.
And you know, it wasn't just individual residents, it was throughout. But if we're aware of numerous widespread outages that go on in an inexplicable fashion, then certainly that's something we might entertain.
well,
I'm
what I'm saying
not
is,
aware of those.
I'm
sorry
saying
to hear
is
of your
that
situation.
AT&T should be made aware of. I'm going to make it aware of as a
You
citizen.
betcha you ought to.
And I'm asking the.
I'll send them a copy of the tape of your speech tonight.
And I'm asking, and I'm asking the village, as my ombudsman, to speak in my behalf too, since we do. When I call AT&T, I get 800 number and I get machines, and I'm sure the village has people they can talk to.
Mr. Robel, I understand that at some point in time that things do cross over from that private situation into a public situation. I'm not quite sure what you've described passes over that hump yet, but We'll keep our eyes and ears open, and thank you for
Well,
bringing it
maybe,
to our attention.
maybe the village staff would be kind enough to call me and give me a number where I could speak to a...
I'm sure I could probably look one up on the computer for you.
How would you call it? A responsible person who will dialogue with me? Instead of press that...
Right. Well, although I have to be,
And I go
obviously...
beep, 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 and I still go beep, beep, beep. And they
Got your
won't-
point, got your point. If
Got
we
my
become
point.
aware of more instances, then obviously it's something that we'll listen, but we also have to understand that there are many different private issues. With respect to the vandalism attempt, I shouldn't say attempt, the act of vandalism that took place in your neighborhood, obviously that's very troubling, very disturbing, and did appreciate your information on that. I'm sure that our police department will work with whomever they need to in order to bring those who are responsible to justice, because that's obviously a
Yeah, and the other thing is...
Very
just
disrespectful act.
They didn't respect the village construction contractors' signs. They drove a car over.
If they're going to
it.
tip over your area, your neighborhood sign, I don't think they're going to respect much else after that, so I'm sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, okay.
But thank you for sharing all that with us.
I'd like to ask other citizens if they hear this presentation of mine to contact me or contact the village.
I think we had a couple right here to my left and right in a moment.
Okay,
Commissioner Waldeck's been itching to say something.
Yes.
thank you.
But let's try not to keep this about, I could talk about some problems I have with the contractors, but that's, let's keep it in a public setting.
If I may, Mayor?
You have the floor,
Okay,
sir.
Thank you. Mr. Robo, I understand your situation. Commonwealth Edison is pretty much a single provider of service for electricity in the village, so it has a different, we have a different relationship with Commonwealth Edison than we do with AT&T. You can go somewhere else, but the problem that you described, I had over Memorial Day weekend, not over the weekend, but the entire week. And the situation was a cable cut on 75th Street due to the construction. So I was out for better than a week, and I understand exactly what you're going through, because as I described at a meeting, I think it was probably the one meeting you missed in a long time, I was able to slow cook ribs before I got to a human voice. So I understand exactly what you're saying, and it was not a single outage. It was a group. They cut a cable. Sounds like they did it again, but you have my sympathy. And if there's something we can do, if there's a magic number to call, I wish I had it too. So I'll give you a call if I find out more. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Over the Father's Day weekend, I had an opportunity to be in Darien Club, visiting family in that, and I noticed a similar situation that Mr. Roble had sent us pictures on. I only bring it up in case it's tied in with his incident. Right in Darien Club Drive in Galway Court, there was actually a brick monument that was toppled, like your picture illustrated, regarding your Nottingham. So I don't know if it's tied together or not. So, and I meant to send an email this morning, but my job got in the way.
That's all right. The other people whose job it is to know these things and to follow up on them. So, but thank you for sharing that. Any other questions or comments of a general nature with respect to matters not appearing on tonight's agenda? All right, hearing none, we'll then move to item 5 on our agenda, which is reserved for public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so we'll move to our consent agenda, which is item 6. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on the consent agenda? Mr. LeCran, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Tom LeCren, 545 Chicago Avenue. I have a question with regard to the electrical aggregation contract that's to be voted on tonight. Specifically, Section 4.1.3, the pricing guarantee. The contractor changed that. We had originally wanted them, if ComEd's price dropped below theirs, they could either match it, come in lower, or send us all back to ComEd. They changed it just to the either or. They'll either match or send us back. And they added an additional paragraph to that particular section, said notwithstanding the foregoing, they'll match or send us back. Termination under this section 4.1.3 may be avoided if the municipality determines that the aggregation program should remain in place at the price and without the need to match, etc. There's another paragraph. How does that work? Is that the manager can determine that we can keep the price they're getting us and not match ComEd's? Under what reason would we even do that?
Which section are you referring to again, Mr. LaFrance?
4.1.3.
4.1.3.
Yep. Pricing guarantee.
Thank you. But that basically, as far as I read it, and I won't speak for the village attorney, but that basically gives us the option of deciding to continue if we choose to do so.
Right.
Yes.
Why would we do that? Why would we continue at the certain?
I don't know, but I like to have options, and that one gives us 3 different
Yeah,
options.
but you didn't put it in there. They did, the contractor.
But it gives us the unilateral right to make a choice. So I see it as working in our favor. The contractor can't dictate that we continue. It's up to the village to do it.
Okay, fine.
So you're right. There may be no circumstance under which we would want to, but we have the ability to do so, and it's entirely our unilateral decision if I'm interpreting that correctly.
That is correct.
Once in a while, I'm correct, so thank you for pointing that out.
The other thing I'm just curious about is that this whole aggregation thing is based on the combination of Westmont and Downers Grove. But the contractor demanded individual contracts, one for Westmont and one for us. What would happen if Westmont wanted to go one way and we wanted to go in another? Like they want to go back to ComEd and we don't. What?
They would have to honor our contract, because it's an individual contract between the village and the supplier.
Okay. They aren't
For
going to
the
come back and
balance.
say, well, wait a minute, now you're splitting, we don't have the total number of people doing the same thing?
Not unless it specifically said that in the agreement, which it
It was a
doesn't.
risk they were willing to take.
They weren't there, okay.
Right. And it's a two-year
Because they
term.
demanded separate contracts, not us.
It's a 2-year term, so the risk is mitigated to some extent by at some point in time it expires. Thank you for those questions. Any other questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items that are on the consent agenda tonight? Hearing none, any questions or comments from any members of the village council with respect to any items on the consent agenda tonight? Commissioner Chanel?
Just because we actually have a large audience of residents here, we're still hoping to get the new pricing for electricity in effect for August, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Sure don't have a question, Commissioner Rankin?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm just picking at her. It's a long story, private joke. Very good. Then do I have a roll call?
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Please.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Burnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. It brings us to item 7 on our agenda, which is our active agenda. We have 2 items on our active agenda tonight, 7A and 7B. The first item, 7A. Do I have a motion to approve the 2013 through 2015 long-range financial plan for the Village of Downers Grove?
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the 2013 through 2015 long-range financial plan.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Any questions or comments from any members of the Village Council? Commissioner Newstead?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to be very clear that this long-range financial plan has been long in the works, and it's working very well. The first bullet in our information is the elimination of a structural gap in general fund finances. That's a huge success story for this long-range financial plan, and we should all be very proud of the fact that we can say we have lots and lots of funding mechanisms in place that are dedicated to revenues and dedicated to expenses. So I'm really pleased to see this moving forward. I also like the way that we went through this year's meeting schedule to come up with the plan to move forward into the next years, and I appreciate all the hard work that went into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. It's my understanding that council hasn't always voted on and approved the long-range financial plan. And from a technical standpoint, it really isn't necessary that we actually have a vote on it. But clearly, a vote for the plan is not a vote for all of the actions previously taken thus far and future possible actions. Not all actions already taken have passed unanimously. And maybe the future actions regarding the plan may not also be, there may be meet with some opposition in whole or part. However, I do believe that no organization should base their actions on what's expedient, but what's always, because every action always has future consequences. Having a plan allows for fairness and consistency for both the organization and people that rely on the organization. Future decisions should not be made because of the plan, but with the knowledge that they may follow or deviate from the plan with valid reasoning. I look at an affirmative vote for this plan tonight as not being a rubber stamp, but rather as an acknowledgement that the majority of council has accepted at various times a framework and guide for future actions compiled in the plan. So I will be supporting this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The long-range financial plan has been accepted unanimously. That brings us to item 7B. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance approving a final plan development amendment to Plan Development Number 19 to permit a third monument sign at Good Samaritan Hospital?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Any questions or comments from any members of the Village Council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter also passes unanimously. That's the end of our active agenda. Now it brings us to item 8 on our agenda, which is the segment of our meeting called our first reading, or our workshop segment of our meeting, where we entertain items for discussion purposes only for action at a future point in time. As is customary, I'll turn over the meeting and the discussion of the single item on our first reading agenda tonight to our village manager, David Fieldman. Mr. Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. That single item on tonight's first reading is the consideration of an award of contract regarding the naturalization of the Valley View Pond. And here to present information on this item is our Assistant Director of Public Works, Andy Sikich.
Good evening.
Good evening. All right, we're over here. Valley View Pond is located in the Valley View Estates subdivision, which is just west of Main Street, north of 71st, and east of Dunham. It's on that screen there. You can see it. I'll point it out since it's kind of far away. It's right there. This is Main right here. This is 71st. Next slide. Oh, this thing? Excellent. Roughly 400 acres drain into this pond. It's part of the Prentiss Creek drainage system. And you can see the tributary boundary on this slide in red. The pond itself is about 2.5 acres in size, but roughly 400 acres drain into it. The existing condition of this pond has been seriously deteriorated over the years since it was constructed in the 70s and 80s. There's significant shoreline erosion, significant sediment deposition from both the shoreline erosion and from the 400 acres that drain into it. And there's a significant Canada goose population out there that tends to denude the banks, eat the vegetation, and leave a lot of waste. From this aerial photo, you can see in the summertime there's significant algae bloom that occurs. You can see it there also in that photo. And that's as a result of the water depth in that pond right now is about 3 to 4 feet or shallower in some areas. It creates the algae blooms, creates odors, significant water quality issues, and we've had some fish kills out there in recent years. We've done an existing site analysis, and this is just kind of an overview of it. You can see the green shoreline is moderately eroded. The yellow is a little bit worse than that, and there's all those depths, if you could read them, they're, again, between 3 to 4 feet, considerably shallower in this entrance finger right here. A little bit of the history of this property. The site acquired this property in 1988 from a non-performing developer. In 2010, the CIP had $150,000 in it for a dredging project. But as over the last couple of years, staff has performed considerable due diligence. We had to do sediment sampling, tests on the sediment. And when we did the sediment testing, the results were that certain PNAs, which are one of the elements that they test for, were slightly above background levels. Now, when we're talking about testing against environmental levels, this is what they call the residential ingestion standard, which to a layman like me means you can't eat it. If you can't eat it, the EPA makes us take it to a landfill. That considerably increases the cost of dredging. Now, we can't take it to a nearby farm. We can't take it to a construction site. We actually have to haul it to a landfill. That drastically increased the budget. Our original budget of $150,000 has bloomed to about $900,000. And so when we reached that point, staff took a step back, had a concept study done. What else can we do with the pond? That is where we get the naturalization option, which I'll show you in a second. Staff took that study, sent it out to our pre-qualified design build contractors. We got 2 proposals, of which the NCAP proposal was the most cost-effective at $522,000. This is the NCAP proposal. It's a concept plan, so none of these things are fixed in stone. But basically, the proposal is to revert this back to what it used to be, which is a naturalized area creek system with the creek on the north side here. You can see it along the north edge of the pond, with the rest of this being a wetland shelf with open water pockets in it. This would leave the sediment on site. We would bring new clean material in to, put over the sediment, move the sediment to where it's not at the shoreline where people can eat it, presumably. And then we would plant it with wetland vegetation. What this does for us, we would lower the outlet pipe here, and we would get, once again, a creek system that would flow from east to west. Creeks naturally carry sediment. When you dig a big pond on them, it creates a large flat spot in your creek system where the water slows down, sediment drops out. It's an unnatural situation. What we're talking about is taking it back to a natural situation where the creek would flow in times of rain, carry the sediment downstream as it's supposed to. These are a couple of pictures of some other pond naturalization projects. Here's what the stream restoration projects look like. This would be more akin to what you'd see on the north side of the project along that creek channel. And this is just a little cost comparison, a little comparison of the dredging option versus the naturalization option. Dredging, we estimate to be about $950,000. Our naturalization option, the contractor's price not to exceed cost, is $522,000. That's a one-time cost with periodic maintenance on a yearly basis of about $5,000 to $10,000 thereafter. The reason the dredging option we don't view as a sustainable option is it's $950,000 this year or next year, and again in 20 years or 30 years we'd have to do it again. So the naturalization option is why, as staff feels, it's a little more sustainable environmentally and financially. The benefits of the 2 projects, the naturalization provides more water quality benefits, wildlife habitat, and increased flood storage. The dredging option, there's really not much water quality benefit to it. The sediment would be hauled to a landfill, and the goose population would still be something we'd have to deal with at that point. From a recreation standpoint, the naturalization option, again, we could work with our design-build contractor to try to work in some fishing. Obviously, there'd be wildlife viewing. But with the recreation option, I've been told that folks out there like to boat, they like to fish, and they even like to ice skate, which personally I wouldn't recommend. It's very dangerous to ice skate on a detention pond. But I've been told that those things go on out there. Aesthetics are in the eye of the beholder. Native plantings have a certain aesthetic. A lot of people like it, a lot of people don't. Open water, again, some people like it, some people don't. So you'd have a different aesthetic with each option. And that's the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll ask for any questions.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to open up the meeting at this point in time. Any questions or comments from the audience? And then the council is going to have an opportunity to ask questions as well with respect to both the plan as well as following up on any comments from members of the audience. I would ask that anyone who comes up and speak, please introduce themselves and give us your name and address. We are keeping minutes of the meeting. And also, please come to the microphone if you're going to speak, because the meeting, of course, is being recorded and televised, and no one can hear you if you're speaking from the back row. You need to be at the microphone. I know there's a lot of folks that are here, and we're very, very glad that you're here, because we actually wanted to make sure that as many people who were proximately impacted by this proposed project were here tonight, because we want to hear what you have to say. Obviously, I think I can say this, just based on the conversations I had saying hello to some people earlier tonight, that everyone realizes that something needs to be done because the current situation is intolerable. So we're really talking about how to fix this and what's the most sustainable way to fix it, as opposed to the other option of not doing anything. That's not an option. As far as I'm concerned, this is an intolerable situation. It's gone on too long. It needs to be remedied, and we're really talking about how to do it. So I just want to get that out there, and I think that's what's being proposed. If you have comments, and one of your neighbors has already said something that you wanted to say, that's fine. We've got it down. There's no need to say it 2 or 3 times. But obviously, we want to hear as many comments and input from as many folks as possible. So at this point in time, if anyone has any questions or comments with respect to this item, please come down to the podium, give us your name and address, and we'd very much like to hear from you. Good evening.
Good evening, good morning, Mayor. Good afternoon. We had a meeting about a month ago on the same subject. And we referred to a lot of our options on, he only has the one option. And I thought there should be several options. But I kind of personally feel, I mean, he's talking like $950,000, and that's actually to dig it out like almost 14 feet he's talking about. I mean, I don't want you guys to go over budget, but couldn't you just spend the $600,000 going as deep as you can, maybe 8 feet instead of the 14 feet, and leaving the lake as it is?
That's something that we'll put down as an option to look at. I just know that, I'll make full disclosure, I lived in Orchard Brook for 10 years. And I bet you that the Orchard Brook subdivision was probably built not too much around the time when this was built. And back then, what developers like to do is they put up these they put up these subdivisions, and they had to provide stormwater detention. So they would make ponds because they had to provide some place for stormwater detention anyway. So why not make a pond out of it, make it something they could market to people to buy the houses? You have a pond in the back, and actually they end up charging more for the houses that are next to the ponds. Well, the same thing happened in Orchard Brook. Now, that was done in the late 60s, and I think they wrapped it up, final phase, maybe in the early 70s. And there were 2 ponds. And originally it was all set up such that the homeowners were supposed to pay for it because it was a homeowners association. I don't think you guys are in a homeowners association. Yeah, well, that's another difference, because what we had there was a developer that was supposed to be responsible for this and left it in the village's hands. So we basically picked up the check, and when I say we, I mean everybody in the village of Downers Grove. Not just your neighborhood, but everywhere. In Orchard Brook, because it was a homeowners association, it was the 330 residents that lived there that were stuck with the bill. And there were 2 ponds, same problem. And it would have to be dredged every 10 to 15 to 20 years, and it was a huge cost. And do you know what the assessments would be for 330 homes, or even whether it's $5 or $6 or $900,000? Finally, the decision was we just can't do this all the time. It can't happen. So it's not a question of, do we do a little bit now? All that does is kick the can down the road. Finally, everybody bit the bullet and said, look, we've got to come up with a sustainable solution that is going to fix it once and for all with minimal maintenance going forward. So I'm just saying that because having gone through this once upon a time in my own personal experience, it's the sustainability aspect that I think is probably the most important. But that being said, your comment about, is there a happy medium between the $500,000 and the $900,000, that's certainly something that we can look at.
Yeah, I know, I've been over there now over 30 years myself, and there's very little maintenance done on the pond by the village.
Right.
And I know the Park District does a good job on their parks. Is there any possibility that this could be handed over to the Park District?
Well, there's no possibility it could be handed over to the Park District. The Park District would have to accept it and actually take it as their property and accept that responsibility. Whether that's something they'd be willing to do, candidly, I couldn't tell you. I suspect I know what the answer would be.
We explored that a couple of years ago in other discussions of stormwater management, and the Park District indicated again that they would not accept this pond.
And obviously the village didn't want to have to pick this up. It was basically not handed to us. It was sort of left on our doorstep. And so yeah, it's obviously this is something that should have been addressed a while ago. That's, no pun intended, water under the bridge, but we're here tonight trying to talk about how to address it going forward.
Then again, okay, Mayor, what I'd like to let everybody else know is that there was a lot of good comments that all the other residents here had that you guys were not attended. And I like to hear, you know, if you guys have to hear them again.
Absolutely.
You know, I think that's what's going to have to happen. Which was quite, you know, it was quite a meeting, and they had some pretty good answers for solutions.
I'm sure of it.
Okay.
And that's actually, that's part of the reason why there's only one item on the agenda tonight. It's all about you guys tonight.
I appreciate that.
So we would like to hear the comments, and I wasn't trying to discourage anybody from speaking earlier. All I was saying is that,
Yeah.
you know, if you say it once, we got it. You don't need to repeat the same thing over and over again. But obviously, if there are different ideas, suggestions, something new, yes, we're very much interested in hearing what you have to say because, again, at least I'm just speaking for myself right now, it's pretty apparent to me that something needs to be done. We're really talking about what and how, not whether.
Okay, I hope some of the other residents come up and voice their opinion. Go ahead.
Would you mind stating your name and your
Oh, I'm
address?
sorry. My name is Daryl Morasso, and I live at 6930 Waterfall Place in Downers Grove. Illinois,
Thank you.
60516.
Got that.
Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner. Actually, you can catch that, so I appreciate it.
Good
All
job, Mayor.
right, thank you, sir. Thank you for coming and sharing your views. Yes, sir, good evening.
Good evening.
Name and address, please.
John Peters, 1041 Roby. And I have some questions and some concerns. You know, you yourself just mentioned about property values of houses and homes that are on the water are higher.
Well, so saith the developer.
Well, has anyone done a study of what this would affect property values?
Not just on the lake, the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, has anyone done that? Is there some way we can get that done?
Probably
Go to
not.
real-
I'll be candid with you,
Go
probably.
to real estate, and then can we hold off on this till we get some real estate professionals looking at it? That's all I'm asking.
Well, that's a question. Let me, if I can answer your question. Well, first of all, no one's done any property value surveys. Then the question is when you say what this would do, I guess that's one of the things we're talking about is what is this? For example, what's the current impact on property values from having what I saw up on the screen in your backyard?
So there are
Doing
two
something might actually bring them up.
I'm assuming that there's still that, as you said, to leave it the way it is not an option. So that leaves us with, I believe, two. One is this proposal, and the other is to dredge the pond. Fact is, that pond hasn't been dredged in 40 years. So a $900,000 investment for 40 years doesn't seem like a whole lot of money to me. Okay? I'm just asking a question. Number two, we heard that the sediment is toxic, so it's toxic that you can't use anywhere else. It has to go landfill. Do we have the reports of the toxicity, what it is? Can that be shared with the residents? Where can we find that?
Well, we obviously have the results and they're public records. I don't see why not. And I don't know if I'd go so far as say toxic. It's just something that because you can't eat it.
I believe somebody said toxic, and on the website, on the PDF on the website, I think I read the word toxic. I may be wrong, but I think I did.
Right.
Although it's not good enough to use anywhere else, or it has to go to landfill, and the reason is
Federal law?
federal law because
You can't eat it.
you can't eat it. Okay, thank you. My other question is, under this current plan, I happen to live on the east side where that little inlet is. And that I see, we're talking about putting in a landfill there. Do we know how much, how high it's going to be? Does anyone have an idea?
The final designs have not yet been completed. This would be a design-build contract, so if the council authorizes staff to proceed with this proposal, there'll be another series of neighborhood meetings where we would accept input on some of the final design issues, and then we would have answers to those types of questions.
So this non-edible stuff, we're just going to cover it up and hope that it's going to be okay? Going to be okay 40 years from now, 30 years from now? Is that, can someone make that promise? I don't know. That's what I'm going to be looking for. If it's too, and I don't want to use the word toxic, but too bad to leave there, it has to go to the landfill, then why are you leaving it there when people live there?
Well, actually, let me make a clarification about that because in its current state, it's not a problem as I understand it. The issue is if you dig it up, you have to put it somewhere. And now the law comes into place and dictates where you can put it. And so what I heard is you can't just take it and put it in a park. You can't put it, you have to take it in a certain place. It's not that it's hazardous in its current state. In fact, it's a natural occurrence, if I understand it correctly, for the most part. You know, there are natural events that led to the current state. What would happen, and again, I'm no environmentalist or whatnot. I don't even try to play one on TV. But my understanding is that once you return it to the natural state, then you would have natural effects from it. But I don't believe it's something that's, I just want to make it very clear that my understanding is there's no hazardous situation right now. It's just once you dig it up, you have to do something with it. I mean, it's no different than if you dig up a foundation for a new home. If it's a certain composition, it dictates what you can do with it.
Okay. But we do have results of some tests, and they will be made available?
I'll clarify, but I don't
Yes,
see
we
why
have
not.
the report results, and we can make those available.
Thank you.
Sure.
Another thing is the area that I live in, that section, when we get heavy thunderstorms, heavy storms, and we get 2 or 3 a year, that water raises about 6 feet from where it is right now. And so if you're going to put a whole lot of landfill in there, what's going to keep that water from raising 6 feet? And when it raises 6 feet, it's about 4 feet from my deck. So what's going to keep it from coming into my house? Have we done a study and looked at that? Has anyone looked at that, at what the impact of heavy rains and a lot of retention will have with this proposal?
What I heard was the proposal isn't finalized yet, so the answer is yes, that will be looked at. But B, my suspicion is because it's going to be running water, there's actually going to be a channel by which the water would be taken through and away, although I,
There is one
again...
now.
No, there would be, there would be.
All right, so if you're going to take over this sediment and you're going to put more landfill to raise it up, so when the rains come in and everything, you're not going to reduce the amount of drainage going in there, are you?
No, we actually expand the amount of
Okay.
capacity for
Yeah.
storage.
So when
And
all
we're-
this,
Right.
when all this rain comes in and it raises the same level as it always does, is it not going to impact the houses in that area?
It would be designed not to because we're lowering the outlet structure on the other side.
Yeah, the short answer is it wouldn't be done to worsen a stormwater issue. That doesn't make any sense. We're not going to try to solve one problem and create another one. And furthermore, I imagine we'd also have to comply with the new DuPage County Stormwater Ordinance, which dictates what you can and can't do there.
Correct. It would actually enhance the stormwater drainage and stormwater management in the area with no negative impact at the surrounding properties.
And the second thing, and I just have two more comments.
Sure.
I apologize for taking so much of your
no
time.
worries.
But one of the things I saw in the proposal was, we're going to plant trees, or we're going to plant indigenous plants there. Who's going to maintain that? Because I can tell you, I've been living there for 20 years, and I have yet to see one village person maintaining anything. I cut your grass. There's never been anyone over there taking care of your property. That's a shame. Two, if we were talking about Barth Pond or Prince Pond, this wouldn't be an option. And my last comment is, about a few years ago, the village gave $1 million to buy a piece of property by Good Sam Hospital that benefits maybe one good man. And this benefits a lot of people. We just want the pond the way we found it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mr.
And
Mayor.
I appreciate
council
that, but
members.
everyone could hold off on the applause after every speaker. We might be here a long, long time.
And here I thought they were cheering for me.
Well, it's never for me, that's for sure. Good evening, sir. Name and address, please.
Roger Genshort, 6900 Roby Avenue. I don't live directly on the pond. We live like one lot off the pond. We've lived there since July of 1980. Seen a lot of progress, some for the good and some not so good, which is why we are here tonight. The pond has been definitely neglected almost since day one. When we moved in there in July of 80, actually I started building the house in September of 79. The pond was dredged in 78. All the sediment was put to the side and then hauled away. So it's been less than 40 years, but it's been neglected. Now, at the meeting in May, we were presented an option of correcting the situation, and they called it a marsh. That's what we were told, a marsh. Definition of a marsh by Webster's dictionary standards, of course, a lowland. It's a wetland, predominantly wet, usually characterized by, let's say, grasses and cottontails. Another synonymous name with marsh is bog, fen, swamp, marshland, moor, swamp-like land, a wash, and a wetland. Tonight, we've glorified that term even more by calling it naturalization. At that meeting in May, the engineer said that the water and the sediment was affected by PNAs. At that meeting, I asked him to explain what PNAs meant. It didn't happen. PNAs mean polynuclear aromatics. Now, before I really get involved in this, like you, I'm not an environmental engineer, but I have worked for people who have done this. In PNAs, chemicals more commonly called BTEX, that's benzene, ethylene, toluene, and xylene. These chemical makeups come from motor fuels. They leach into the pond through the sediment and through the wash from the surrounding roadways. I would venture a guess, and I think somebody mentioned, you could go to any pond, wash, any retention pond in the village of Downers Grove that the streets of the stormwater drain into those ponds, and you're going to have the same problem that we have. Now, whether you decide to, and you're not going to decide tonight, we understand that, but what we would like you to do is at least send this back to the engineering group and saying, wait a minute, to turn this into naturalization, whatever you want to call it, marsh or whatever, is not really in the best interest of the people who live around there or the village of Downers Grove. This proposal to turn it into naturalization, to me, and I think maybe some of my neighbors, is a lose-lose situation for the village of Downers Grove, and it's a win situation only for the contractor designing it and the contractors performing the work. Now, one of the things that you showed was a beautiful landscape way out in the woods. We would love to have a backyard like that, turned into a marshland. There are companies out there that can take what you want to do, they can take pictures of the houses, the surrounding area, and they can plug in what you propose to do for a marshland to give this audience a better idea of what it's going to look like on a ground level, and they can do it in a 360-degree panorama. I know that because I work for an architectural engineering firm now that does that for their clients. This can be done, and it would be a heck of a sales tool for these people to really see what the finished product might be instead of just saying you want to naturalize it or you want to turn it into a marsh.
I agree, and I would actually invite everyone, it's not exactly the same, but I mentioned the front pond of Orchard Brook. You don't have to get a three-dimensional drawing. You can drive down Highland Avenue. Go north across from Good Samaritan Hospital, and you'll see exactly what it looks like. It was done there about 10 years ago. Not
Right.
exactly the same situation because there's going to be running water here, but
That's fine
that's
for
a
their
naturalized
neighborhood.
area.
That's fine for their neighborhood, but it's not in our backyard.
No, I understand that, but your
Yes.
point was, do you want to see what it looks like?
They could
we,
take-
we have one, this very similar
that.
thing that actually has been done.
I understand that. I say it's a lose-lose situation for the village of Downers Grove because once this is completed, and should any of these homeowners put their property up for sale, it may look beautiful from the front, and when somebody walks in the back and they look at this and they can say, is that a marsh, a swamp, what's going on here? I'll say they're going to lose sales of their houses. They're going to lose, it's going to devalue their property values. The village is going to lose taxing base. I think it needs to be looked at deeper before any decisions are even thought about being made to turn this into a naturalization, a marshland, or whatever needs to be the village wants to do. And we need to get to a win-win situation for not only the residents and the village of Downers Grove. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name's Len Prokop. I live at 1051 Roby Avenue, Downers Grove, and I'm also concerned about the pond. One of the things that has not been brought up, and we talked about the Park District. Well, the Park District borders the west end, and the Park District has taken away all the shrubbery and a barrier basically to prevent all the leaves, debris, beach balls, everything from blowing into the pond. So anytime we have wind from the west, which is almost always, everything blows into the pond, and it blows everything all the way to the actual inlet, and it stays there until we get any type of rain. But before we get the rain, most of the things become waterlogged and they sink to the ground. And right now there's beach balls, there's a dead raccoon, there's condoms. It's all from the park. And that stuff just smells horrible. We're right on that channel, and we smell this all the time. We got a little rain, so it kind of covers it up. But as soon as the water evaporates, it really smells. People have come over to our house and said, what smells like a sewer? And it's our lovely pond. And I got this little email here, And it says to truly solve this problem, the village needs to dredge it. And that was from Andy Sikich. And he recognized that along with everyone that has come out. I had been calling and brought this to the village's attention since about 2003. And the first response was 4 people with a wheelbarrow and a shovel trying to bring out some of the stuff. And they've tried everything. They've done a lot of, they put an aerator in. They wasted money on this aerator because the water is so shallow, they can't turn it up to do any good because it sucks up the bottom. We get algae because of the lack of water in the pond. Lack of oxygen produces more algae. So we have a lot of problems over there. So there's a lot of things that are bad, and they're talking about putting a lot of this, nature and natural planting around. Well, just today they were talking about what an epidemic we have of mosquitoes for West Nile, and what's going to happen in these shallow areas with all these natural plants that trap water and make it stagnant. That's going to be a real problem. Also, along with the stuff that blows in, it's all going to get trapped in these plants. Now, I had suggested, and I didn't know what happened from there, to dredge as much as they could and form an island in the middle. You can get quite a bit of material in the middle, and then he was saying something, Andy was saying something that you can't do it because you're changing the water level. Well, you're doing the same thing by covering it all up with some kind of covering over the marsh. But it really is a horrible smelling thing. And I brought a sample with it. If any of you have the nerve to smell it, I'd be more than happy to pass it around. I also have a picture that I would like to pass around where you can see what it looks like. So I've got plenty more, especially when we had the fish kill, where the whole top of the pond was loaded with dead fish. The village had to come out, and they had teenagers, poor kids had to scoop dead fish out all day long. And that was all because of the lack of water in this pond. Well, I thought I'd bring that to your attention, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rocap. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Ron Zarek. I'm an original homeowner on the Valley View site. Some of the shots that were shown in the rendering are from my backyard. I know I've worked with Jeff in the past for the last 3 or 4 years trying to come up with a resolution. So I appreciate the efforts that are being done. I want to just take a hand vote from the people that are here. And this is just to show you from our perspective, was this an acceptable solution that was presented? How many were in favor of the wildlife presentation? Would you please raise your hand? Absolutely none. This was conveyed to the person that presented this at that meeting that this was not an acceptable solution to anyone around our homes. Yet we come here and we see that this is a proposal that is proposed. I also take a look at what we are spending to repaint a water tower, $1 million to repaint a water tower. Now I ask you, a 40-year pond that has not been dredged, the sustainability of that versus the painting of a water tower, and when will that be repainted? And what has a greater value for the people that live in the village of Downers Grove? The homeowners around this lake have spent tens of thousands of dollars to create an ambiance in their backyard to look out over the water. The swamp, which, by the way, in the rendering, there is an inlet coming in off of Valley View, which would now just dump right into the swamp. If we can pull up the rendering, I'm happy to illustrate. So the storm water in the back that they're calling a river, which is really an open storm water, does not address the inlet off of Valley View. Where would that water go? It would be dumped right into the middle of what I would call this swamp or marsh or wetland. And with that comes wildlife, animals, rodents, mosquitoes, etc. I don't want my kids going in the middle of that area, all right, with wildlife. The fish, it's ridiculous what the rendering is. They could not show us an actual drawing that has this with a residential area. They're showing us this wildlife preserve out in the open. I call your attention to the Lamont 75th and on 75th and Lamont. If you want to take a look at what this looks like, drive down Lamont Road between 75th and 83rd. You'll see what the wildlife looks like. Would any of you want that in your backyard? Would any of you want to have your kids go out where there's possums, raccoons, rats, God knows what? And again, I call attention to the fact that who's going to maintain this? For 40 years, we have maintained this property to the best of our ability. When we purchased this, the village of Downers Grove was committed, or the Park District was committed to taking over this pond. That was the deal from Rudy Gaston, who was the developer. We cannot help the fact that Gaston was a subgrade contractor. All right? The village of Downers Grove had to take this because the Park District would not. That's politics. We had no control over that. Yet we're left with what has happened. And now we're talking about a short-term fix to create wildlife when I'm going to spend $1 million to repaint a water tower, which is going to have to be repainted again in 10 years, 15 years. So I can't talk about sustainability and then spend $1 million to repaint a water tower. It doesn't add up. And that's what we're asking you guys to ask them to come back with an alternative plan that would help address this situation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Other questions or comments from the audience?
Mayor, Mr. Len had referenced the photograph. Did he pass that around for us to see? Mr. Len, would you be willing to do that?
I think it was Mr. Prokop, actually.
Somebody.
Did I call him?
Or maybe it was.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Len.
In the meantime,
I'm
good evening, ma'am.
Messina. We live at 1140 Valley View Drive. We are original owners. We moved in '85. At the time, the lake also was the problem, who should take it over. The developer was about to leave. There were still homes to be built. It should have been pursued from the village. The village promised the Park District would take it over. We paid taxes to two parks, Orion and the other one, McCollum. We paid taxes to two parks. When we mentioned it, they put all the taxes and lumped it into one, and we're still paying that, even though the Park District is now out of it. The lake area has never been mowed by the village or maintained. It was once wrapped because the state of Illinois has requirements, and the village at that time wrapped the shores because there was significant erosion at the time, because village engineers also said the lake was cut too deep, and when the water comes rushing in and the wind, it doesn't look like a lake, it looks more like Lake Michigan. I also like to say the lake is not only a neighborhood lake, it is not only our subdivision who profits from it. It is the village that owns it because it catches stormwater, and the stormwater is not channeled into the sewer system of Downers Grove. It is only disposed of into the lake through big pipes that are also exposed and are very unsightly. And the park is cut too deep. Nobody does anything. There is oil from cars, and it's been piling up. We like to see, and I'm glad that everybody asked, the quality of the water, exactly what is in, and who is the state representative or the state agency, their findings. We need to know that. Before we cover it up and go on with the plans, if there is a problem, we need to know what goes on to make sure when they're marshaling, like you propose, if it's stagnant, if it keeps flowing in from the roads, from whatever, from other, is sectionals of lakes, a number of lakes that are interconnected in. Mr. Waldeck, you have some lakes in your area. They're all interconnected. They are flowing into each other. Some of them are clean, and some of them are not so clean. There is some near 63rd and Wood, where Home Depot is on that street. Very, very bad, also polluted. And it all keeps on passing it down the road. But it is not a neighborhood park. It's the village, and it's used for water. So if it needs to be cleaned up, the last meeting that we had, there was a letter sent out only to the homeowners directly on the lake. The real estate value, the quality of life is affected not only by us living directly on the lake, bordering on it, but by all the streets surrounding about it, by the subdivision. There are 4, 5, or 6 streets. There's at least 40, 50, if not 60 homes that are directly affected by it. So the village needs to step up instead of kicking it down the thing. I hope that your plans are not final and that there are other considerations. To spend only this amount of money on this neighborhood for a village thing that you have that benefits the whole village is not a good solution. It's not a steady one. It's just postponing it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Dave Young, 1111 Roby Avenue. I have a couple of comments and then a couple of questions. One, I bought my house because it was on a lake. I didn't buy it because it's going to be on a swamp. How many of you, if you had purchased a house on a lake, would want it to have been turned into a swamp and would be happy with it? Okay, so no answers, I'm gathering.
I'd be happy to answer, sir, if you'd like an answer.
Yeah, but it's not worth an answer. Okay. Question. It was said earlier that the lake will rise 6 feet during rainstorms. And I had to replace a retaining wall last year because the original was timber, and it's 3 feet underwater every time the lake does go up. And this presentation or someone here has still said that the water will rise that much whenever it rains. Is that correct?
The proposed project will actually increase flood storage, so it will not exacerbate the problem, but will make it better. To what extent that is, we haven't calculated that.
Was the question, will the water rise 6 feet whenever it rains?
Yes.
The answer, I heard no.
But he also said they've not calculated it, so they don't have any idea.
No, that's,
But, okay.
sir, excuse me.
Okay.
If you'd like answers to the question, I'm happy to answer them. But please don't take our silence as not wanting to answer your questions. I'm trying to listen to what you're saying.
All right. Well, let's say that
This would all be looked at, because whenever you do any kind of a project like this, there are stormwater regulations that have to be followed. Clearly, we're not going to try to fix one problem by creating another one with a
Agreed.
stormwater issue. No one wants to do that. That would be silly.
Okay, but let's say that
We're not going to make it so it raises 12 feet. If that's your question.
Let's say that the water does raise a certain amount. It's going to have to if it takes all of this extra rain from the storm sewers, the storm system. What's going to happen with fish? They're going to float out into the marshland. Then the water is going to recede, and those fish are going to die on the marshland unless we take all of the fish out of the lake. And just for info, I believe it was in 2010 when we've had a good amount of algae on the lake. The village tried to kill the algae by spraying something on it. Instead, they killed thousands of fish. And that's what they were actually scooping off one particular Monday morning, because I called, first I called Park Service because I thought they owned the lake, and then I was referred to the village. And the village did a great job of taking them off. I do want to thank them for that. But that's basically the only thing that I've seen the village do for maintenance of the lake. One other question. What will the turning this into a wetlands do to the water table? Anything? It's just a question. And has that been thought about?
That will be looked into. When you mean the water table, do you mean the subsurface water?
I'm subsurface, the surrounding areas. What's it going to do to the water table for our houses?
Water table, if you're talking about stormwater, that's something that needs to be looked into in any project of this nature. If you're talking about the Well, I don't know.
Right, neither do I. I'm just asking the
question. Is anyone
question.
here on well water?
No.
Then it won't affect your drinking water at all.
I'm not talking about drinking water.
That's what he's saying.
I'm not understanding your question.
Okay, what's it going to do to the foundations of our homes?
Yes.
What's it going to do to the water
Yeah,
table?
that would be a stormwater issue. That will be investigated thoroughly.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what
Okay.
you were asking.
And I, also somebody, it's been commented already a couple of times, but basically the presentation we saw tonight was the one we saw in May. With the exception, you took out the slide of Banff, Canada. I don't know why that was in the presentation, because I really don't care what the marshland in Banff is like. But again, we haven't seen what it's going to look like with our house. Thank you.
Understood, and that's a fair point. Thank you, sir. Other questions or comments from the audience? Yeah, the answer is yes, sir, but if you wouldn't mind waiting until other people have had a chance to speak, then yes, by all means, you can speak again.
Anthony
Good
Barrows,
evening.
1061 Roby. I'm also on the channel of the lake. In the 6 years I've been there, the channel has risen, like they all say, at least 6 feet. What's it doing to our retention walls? My neighbor had to replace his, he had to replace his. Mine's going to be next, probably. So if they're going to raise the level of the land, what's it going to do to our walls? Everybody else in the lake doesn't have this issue except for the people in the channel part. Right? So what's it going to do by raising the level? It's been 6 feet high at least 6 times in 6 years, up to the wall, to the top of the wall. I've been there 6 years and it's been 6 times already. The lake doesn't freeze. Why doesn't the lake freeze? You know why the lake doesn't freeze? It's polluted. pH level never freezes. 20 below zero. I go out to the snow blow to go ice skating. Couldn't snow blow it because it wasn't frozen. It's a cesspool is what it is. It's the geese, it's the ducks, it's the pollution that comes in from the streets. About 5 years ago, they put a big sewer pipe in there. What did that do? You know what that does? It takes all the water from 75th and Lamont Road. All that water comes into our retention pond. It serves a purpose because the water comes up, the next day it's down. I don't know where it goes. I'm happy it goes away, but obviously we're on the lake, so it creates problems for our walls, for these people's homes, and that's the issue. So by raising the land, I don't know what it's going to do. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Like everybody else, I think it needs to be dredged, but $900,000, whatever it is. Property values are already going down. I mean, I've been there 6 years. My house is down $100,000. What's it going to be now? You know? That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Janice Sinek, 6910 Roby Avenue, and I'm right on the pond. And my question is just about the dredging. I know you have a quote for it. Was that 1 quote, 2 quotes, 3 quotes? I know with getting rid of all this stuff for the EPA is very expensive, but I was wondering if there was more than 1 quote or 2 to see if there was another option to do the dredging.
It's just,
At a cost-effective basis.
it's a cost estimate prepared by staff. There have been no bids or proposals taken. We're confident it's in the ballpark.
You're confident it's in the ballpark? Okay.
So that's one option, is to send it out to bid and see if we get something that's dramatically different.
Something else, maybe some company somehow, I mean, there are options
possible.
out there that maybe we can put the stuff somewhere else. And I know most of us are leaning towards the dredging, but we did build our homes there and facing that pond and putting all that extra into it, and we really hate to lose it. So we're here to try to save our pond and to try to save Downers Grove. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think it's something we can certainly look into. Yeah, obviously it's an unfortunate situation. When these things were done years ago, this was sort of standard, and it's been proven by the passage of time not to be a very good idea. Obviously, the village inherited this against its will, and we're having to deal with it, and you're faced with the situation. So we're all just trying to figure out how to go about addressing the situation. So we appreciate the comments and input. I've heard a number of good ideas and good suggestions, things to follow up on, and we certainly will. But obviously want to keep it open for other comments and input because it's greatly appreciated. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Deb Estrom. I'm 6950 Waterfall Place. Is there any way you can put the video back up? I want to show one of our neighbors' picture. Get to visualize the flood that was showing. One more. Keep going. Talking about mine's backyard. There's the backyard. Keep on. That one. This here, it's already 3 feet high after the rainstorm, just to give you a visual idea what it looks like. All the rocks are covered. This is just a light rainfall. When it rains like a good, I don't know, 12 hours or something, it's another 3 feet high.
Okay.
It covers all this into Ron's backyard. Just to give you an idea what it looks like.
Thank you.
That's 3 feet already. That's after a rainstorm. And my property shared that property.
Thank you for
and
pointing
I
that
got
out.
a fenced-in backyard. One time, it touches my fence. And I was further back. All that was covered with water. So just to give you a visualized idea.
Your proposal, just so you know, that stormwater that would just drain and sit.
That's the sewer water from the street.
It would sit before it evaporates.
Okay, and that's the way it is right now. So if nothing happens, that's going to keep happening.
Right. And here's
Every time it rains heavy.
Here's the deck or the wall that goes
Oh,
up.
hold on,
It goes
sir,
over that
hold on.
wall.
Thank you,
So,
ma'am.
if we don't have that pond, where's the water going to go? That's my concern. I bought
Duly
my
noted.
house at the end of 1988. When I saw the pond, I bought it. If I saw the marsh, I wouldn't buy it. I don't know what else to add on top of their comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Wilson. I live at 1031 Roby, which is the entrance to the pond, the very first house on the east end on the north side. And the water quality, just like last Wednesday, was so bad that it really was a sewer. I mean, the color and the smell and everything else. One of the things, besides the pond itself, I think we need to do some type of planting in there in water type of plants that would filter some of the water. I mean, the quality has been terrible. I moved in there in 1990, and it gets worse and worse, and there are weeks at a time you just can't go outside, really. It smells that bad, just like a sewer. So I think we need to address the quality of the water as well as whatever we do here. And I do think we need a compromise from what we're talking about here, in the sense that it would be possible to have an island in the middle of this thing and several channels, but taking the whole thing in one end like you showed before and making a marshland out of it, I don't think is the answer. I think we need some kind of compromise between the two, and if we could find a way to dredge
Explore
some of
other
that-
options.
Yeah, and if we could find a way
It's
to...
been 40 years, maybe another,
Yes,
a little more
exactly.
time might be worth it.
It's just, I think this pond is just a real selling point of the house. It was, I mean, I've always wanted to live on the water.
Although maybe not in its current condition is what
Not
I'm
in the
hearing.
current condition, no. But I think we need to look at more alternatives than just what we have here. And it needs a very thorough study on water quality as well as aesthetics as well. And it needs to be dredged, at least. I mean, we have in the shallow end no more than about an inch of water. And that was like 3 feet when I moved in there. So, I mean, we need to get something out of there. There's nothing at all. Every time it rains, all that stuff washes into the rest of the pond. So it has to be deeper than what we've got. That's basically.
Thank you, sir. Other questions or comments from members of the audience?
Hello, Mayor and
Good
Council.
evening.
The name is Louis Stankaitis, 6910 Waterfall. I moved in about 6 years ago with a brand new wife and no kids. And now I got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And life on that, the minute I walked into that house, I paid a huge premium. This was at the peak of the real estate market before everyone lost their pants. And I really love it living there, and just want to add a couple comments. I'm a kayaker, and I kayak on that lake. And I also design an experiment with those kayaks, and I put up a sail, and I try sailing in that lake. And the thing is that there's fish in this lake. They're almost all gone now because of the shallowness. All my friends that have children love to come to my house because the fishing is so cool for little kids, because there's a lot of small bluegill in there. This solution here would eliminate all the fish. There would be no fish. There would be no kayaking, because most of the time it's just going to be a little bit of running water. Again, the ice skating. There's people that put out huge lights and hay bales, and we go out ice skating there. And there's people that, you know, this whole community gets together and the kids get together. Someone just now finished a huge tree house on that lake or on that pond, and you know, they put in a little a wire for the kids to come cruising down. It's a good-looking tree house, and I think that, you know, there's a huge quality of life around these ponds. I'm an avid amateur photographer, and I've caught green herons, blue herons, and night herons. Well, the great blue herons are pretty common, but the night heron and the green heron, you don't see those guys. And they only come to this pond because of the fish. And I don't think we're going to see these types of birds when it's a swamp, because there's no minnows, there's not going to be any fish. And so I take great pleasure in spotting, you know, unusual looking things coming through, you know, wildlife coming through there. And lastly, I just want to talk about, my neighbor had a concern, he couldn't make it, and he wanted to make sure that I said a couple of points, is that this is a retention pond, and we mentioned that there's 400 acres out there that come through. There's a purpose for a retention pond. A retention pond's purpose is to collect silt and to collect garbage so it doesn't go down further downstream, and it's supposed to be built into the budget. It is a function of a retention pond to be scraped and reclaimed again, and then it goes back into doing its duty, you know, collecting garbage again, and then, you know, so that's something that should be in any budget anytime you do plan a retention pond.
Right, except let's just be clear, this was not ever in the village's budget. This was something that was supposed to be the developer's responsibility, and how that was done with respect to the going forward was supposed to be a private concern. This is what we see happening over and over again, is these developments were built back in the day where they had to meet their stormwater obligations by creating these detention ponds. And yes, they were supposed to decline to accept water. Keep in mind, none of these are naturally occurring creatures. This is all man-made. Everybody understands that, of course. It may have been there for a long time, but this was all created by man. This is not a natural situation. And the developer then puts this in order to meet his or her stormwater obligations, in order to be able to make their profit and sell the homes to all the people. But then they don't make good on their promise, which is to have a budget to maintain this for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. That guy's gone.
But you're a new mayor. Who knows what the deal was and what was cut, you know, 30 years ago?
I know exactly what the deal was. It was the developer's obligation, and the developer's gone. And because we're the public body that has jurisdiction and responsibility for stormwater management, we're now saddled with the obligation. So that's why we have to be prudent about this. And we're listening, and no one's making any decisions tonight. So just to take note of that. But it's, you know, we have to balance the neighborhood, and we also have to balance the entire community, because all Downers Grove is going to pay for this. Whether it's one solution, the other solution, some third solution that we haven't explored yet, and nobody's saying that there may not be other solutions. But let's keep in mind, this is not a natural situation. This was a man-made problem. It was a man-made issue that was handed to the village, not of its asking. So I only want to point that out because when you said it's something we should have had in our budget, not initially.
But just like, I think I like that example.
Now we have no choice.
I like that example of the water tower. Now, this is something that we have to live with now, and I think that over 30 years, dredging it and then, you know, rolling the rock further down the road 30 years from now is not a bad idea.
Well, but there's a difference with the water towers. We actually have an entire water distribution system. We do have a plan for repainting the towers and replacing the pipes, and that is planned for. This was sort of dumped in our backyard. Yes, back in whatever it was, 1988, so I'm not trying to say that there's no responsibility for it, but it's not exactly a perfect analogy. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's good, and it's good that you. I have another thing. I have a buddy that's in the environmental reclamation business, and he's having people checking out the pond, and he seems to think that he might be able to come in at a lot somewhere in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. Would you be willing to look at?
I'd love to see a proposal like that.
So-
That'd certainly be something I think we'd all want to consider at least.
So that would be coming. Someone came out today, as a matter of fact, and so I'll be keeping in touch with you or the community to see if you'll be willing to consider that. And lastly, my friend also wanted to put out the point that, you know, again, with having small children, he's on Valley View Road, and that's a busy kind of through street, so he doesn't want his kids playing in the front yard. He wants them in the backyard, and his point is that now having the swamp back there with all the mosquitoes and whatever, what we're assuming to animals and so forth, that it's just there's no place for the kids to play then. And so anyway, that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Mark Wickline. I live at 1151 Roby. I purchased my house because of the pond. Since the pond's been there kind of static for 30 years, I don't think we're pressured into making a decision quickly. I would like to know what budget has been spent to explore various alternatives. I mean, has there been any money spent looking at option A, option B, option C? Has anything actually hard currency been spent in doing that?
Yes, and we can provide those numbers at the next meeting.
Okay, that was different than the May meeting. That wasn't made clear. And the second thing is, when will those be available? When will those options be available? We've only seen two. Are there any more options possible? And if we're going to spend $500,000, the difference between 500 and millions, again, 500,000, but no one seems to go with the wetland, even though it's the simplest solution. It has the potential of being a long-term solution.
Right.
It's the least desirable solution. So maybe
I'm
we
getting
need to
that
look at
impression.
some more options. Maybe we need to look at more options, and maybe I was told at the first one that no money had been spent. The consulting company, one consulting company was talked to, presented their plan, and that's the plans we've been looking at. I was unaware of, or was made unaware of, that there was other options or other money spent, and I would like to know how much.
We'll have that for the next meeting, it sounds like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Yogi Desai. I'm at 6940 Waterfall Place. I moved to Downers Grove about 20 years ago from Philadelphia, from the East Coast. And I was actually searching for the houses. And I was completely new to this area. This was my first time in the Chicago area. And I was kind of watching, I was searching kind of on the online, and I was reading, and one of the sites was kind of showing the 10 best cities to live in the United States. Downers Grove was number 5 on that thing. And that kind of clicked me. I said, you know, I'm moving to Chicago. I saw the name of Downers Grove. I never had been to Chicago before. This was my first time. And here I'm seeing that a town called Downers Grove is that number 5, the best cities to live in the United States. That's where I kind of started searching, and I found this house. And obviously, I can say this, that, you know, those kind of retention ponds, or we call lakes, or the ponds, whatever we want to call it, I think they add the beauty of the village. They beautify the village. They enhance the properties of the village. They increase the values of their properties in the village also. I think we need to do, as a community, and especially as a village, this pond has been, as everybody said, I have been there for 20 years now, but it has not been taken care of, or had not been addressed for cleaning or any purpose. And that is why where we are today is because that has never been taken care of, and I think we have to take care of it. To do that, I think we need to explore what are our options. Are there any other contractors? Are there any other options? Naturalization, obviously, nobody wants to go and consider that. There must be more options to that. But I think the best option to me, as I see, my son had 2 twins. He has twins, a boy and a little girl, 5 months old. I would not like to have my kids my grandkids kind of growing up in that kind of environment. So obviously, as everybody else said, and I would like to kind of voice my opinion too, that I think we need to kind of really consider. I'm sure that if we go just send it out for the contract outside, we should be able to find somebody who can do it for a better pricing. The dredging is, I think, this option that we should consider. Thank you.
All right, thank you for sharing that, sir. I think we understand that the neighborhood preference right now would be to dredge it, restore it to what it looked like 40 years ago. Whether that's a feasible option, we'll explore that. But I understand what the expressed preference is. Good evening, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Excuse me. Diane Vida, 1171 Roby. This is all basically targeted at the people around the lake, but we are not the only ones that enjoy that pond as such. Everybody from the adjacent subdivisions, people that park at O'Brien Park, they walk all the way down, they bring their kids down there, fishing, ice skating. They got little power boats that they put out there. So it's not only us that enjoy this pond. And I personally, I've been there going on 30 years. Nothing has ever been done to ever maintain it, except putting the aeration in, which is doing nothing at this point. And I understand what you're saying about Gaston, but in the same respect, the Park District was supposed to take that land. That's what we were told we were all purchasing on that property. We all paid premiums for those lots. And because it wasn't in a condition, the village took it, took only part of this gentleman's bond money, rip-rapped the lake, did what the Park District wanted, then the Park District still wouldn't take it. So I don't feel that that's our fault, and I don't feel that at that point it's the village fault, and I know it's an expense, but I really do not want a swampland, behind my house. And when they're showing you that that's 3 feet, I have a 4.5 feet retaining wall that has come over my retaining wall twice in past 30 years. So the water will rise, and it's somehow, for some reason, it seems to come more on our side of the lake than on the other side. But I mean, I personally do not want to see that wetlands. And I mean, they keep on addressing it as a wetland. It's not a wetland, it's a swamp. And that was one of the things back in 1987, 88, 89, that I had gotten into an argument with Mr. Gaston, and somebody from the village came out there, and we were actually on the news, and I tried to find the clippings, and I can't find them. They're probably up in the attic, because I was going to bring them tonight to show you that this was going on back then. So whatever you can do to come up with another alternative, there's got to be another solution than turning that into a wetland. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and sharing your comments. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Tully. I just found this in the paper. My name is, Carol Caniff, 1071 Roby Avenue. Team takes silt samples from Barth Pond. And I read all about it, and it said that 3 little men got in a little boat, and they went out and they picked up some silt. And it said the village is responsible for the stormwater aspect of Barth Pond, which is on 55th Street, which includes maintenance. Silt makes its way into the pond through storm sewers during heavy rains. Little by little, it builds up. A dredging company will be hired if officials determine removal of the silt is necessary. Why them and not us?
There are some important differences between Barth Pond and the situation you're talking about, which we can go into in detail if you'd like, but I understand your point.
Okay. You don't have to go into...
For example, Barth Pond is in the middle of a Park District property. This is in private property.
But it all, yeah, I noticed that. That's what it says
And
here.
there are intergovernmental agreements, and there's a long history, and offline, we'd be happy to explain it to you, but it's a different situation.
Okay. So then, basically,
But I understand your point.
okay.
It's in the same village.
But they had no problem, just, it didn't say, it said the village of Downers Grove.
Right, but there are intergovernmental agreements between the Park District and the Village of Downers Grove that have changed over time. That pond is in the middle of a park district. There's different taxing bodies with jurisdiction. This is an entirely private situation. I mean, the history is completely different. Yes, it's in the same village, but, you know, that's like saying your neighborhood is exactly like every other neighborhood in town. Of course it isn't. Your neighborhood's special.
Okay, thank you.
They used to come and actually mow the lawns. You know,
Right.
they
Well,
come-
that's Park District. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Council. Frank Falish, 820 Prairie. You know, as I understand it, the dredging estimate was put out by our staff, right? You know, a couple of weeks ago, remember, I complained about some of their pricing. I thought they were going way high. And I think it probably deserves another attempt to get prices.
Very well
from
made.
somebody. And now, that's 60-inch sewer from 75th and Lamont Road. When was that put in? Was that put in after the lake was developed?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, it seems to me that that was an illegal thing to do, because I don't think that retention pond was designed for for 75th Street, was it?
I don't know. I'd have to look into
And,
that.
and it looks to me like that the retention is not adequate from what these people have said. Just from what I can see, it looks like it's inadequate, and there should have been more studies made on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any new folks want to speak? Any new issues or any new observations? Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Robert Traub. I live at 1181 Roby Avenue. I guess our question, this is a great civics lesson for all of us here, but what's going to happen next? I understand there's going to be another meeting with the neighbors.
Well, actually, if I can interrupt you, what's going to happen next is the village council's been listening for, I don't know, about the last hour. Hasn't even had a chance to ask any questions yet. So the next thing that's going to happen is we've now heard from you, and I imagine my colleagues are going to have a bunch of questions, comments, there may be follow-up. So the short answer is I don't know yet, because we're not even close to being done with this topic.
Okay.
And we're not taking any action tonight anyway.
Okay,
So
'cause I
what
see on
I
this-
don't, so I can't answer your question is what's next, because we're not there yet.
Okay, but are we going to have another neighborhood meeting so that we can review other plans?
Don't know yet, sir, because there's still a whole portion of the meeting hasn't happened yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. But we'll let everyone know what is the next step once we know what the next step is. We want to let you go first, hear what you have to say. Any other questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this matter? And by the way, if you just don't speak now, don't think you're not going to have an opportunity. Obviously, we're all available by email and telephone, and quite frankly, you know where we live.
Hi, I'm Sheila Kazravi. I live at 1141.
Good evening.
Good evening. I moved to my house at 1141 Roby in 1985, and I vividly remember that Park District used to come with the tractor and mow the lawn around the lake. So they were taking care of it at that point. And there was some rocks that they brought and put around the lake. They were maintaining it at that point. I don't know what happened, what kind of a politic was played that they stopped maintaining it. So that would be my question. I want to know what happened that they stopped
The history?
maintaining it. So it's not like the builder was supposed to take care of it.
Yes, and I'm not suggesting that the
Okay,
builder
I
just
just
dropped it
wanna
in our
make sure, and
pocket
we
last
are all
week. I know it
paying
was back in
taxes.
the 80s.
And we all are paying tax here. So we live in Downers Grove, and we want to make sure that, you know, if that pond hasn't been taken care of 40 years, I think it's about time to do something about it.
I don't think anyone in this room disagrees that something needs to be done. It's, as I said at the outset, I think it's more about what and how. Yes, sir.
Yes, and Ryan's here. Okay, so I just want to make one final point. The $522,000 budget, we've been living with this a long time. For at least the last 3 to 5 years, I've had personal contact with the village regarding this. Rather than make an investment that everyone is not happy, is it possible that money could be accrued over the next several years to fund a project that will appease the homeowners as well as meet the village needs? And that was my final point. We don't need to do it right now. We've lived with this for at least the last 5 years. What's going to do the best for all of us?
Fair question. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any new thoughts? Anyone with a brilliant solution that only cost about $100,000? All right. Well, thank you very much for all your comments and input. A lot of good questions. You've given us a lot to think about. I think there's going to be some follow-up no matter what we do in terms of this. But now I'm going to turn it over to our workshop where the village council gets to ask questions of staff and picking up on some of the things that folks have said. So I'll throw it open to my colleagues. Who would like to start off? Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me start by just addressing a couple of things. One of the last questions asked, what happens next? It's a great question because it's not something that's necessarily predetermined. What you have in the, I hope you all got a copy of this. If not, we certainly get you more. What you have is one recommendation for us to consider. And the very point of having meetings where we talk about it one time and potentially vote on it others, because what we're doing now is taking up information. It may or may not be something that we act on. It may be something that we ask for different information. It may be something that we ask for a whole other plan. That's the very purpose of what we're doing. So it's important that everybody is here talking about it, as the mayor said a couple of times. A couple of things that I'd like to just clarify about the process, regardless of what solution might end up getting landed on. We've heard a couple of times concerns about stormwater levels, and those are really valid concerns. They're important. But the process to do anything, whether it be dredging or whether it be naturalization or whether it be whatever else might be out there as options 4, 5, 6, and 7, necessarily requires compliance, as the mayor indicated a couple of times, with county ordinances and Illinois State EPA ordinances. The fact of those is that but for a mistake, which certainly can be made, but for a mistake, the result, whatever the result is, should be an improvement in the stormwater management capability and stormwater management handling of this area. So is it going to go up 12 feet instead of 6, or will it go up 5.5 when it just rains instead of 3? It shouldn't. That's not to say it can't be an engineering mistake. You know, bridges fall down across the planet because people make mistakes in engineering. But the process beyond these walls involves the state and the county and necessitates a resolution that is an improvement in everybody's condition. So I don't know if that helps. I don't know if it puts any mind at rest at all about the stormwater aspects of it, but it's kind of an important thing to understand, regardless of the answer. There was a question, sort of, or a comment, sort of, about Barth and Prentiss. And as the mayor alluded to some of the Barth issues, Prentiss also has some unique aspects too. There's what's called an SSA associated with Prentiss, which means immediate residents around there help fund separately, apart from their regular property taxes, what's done at Prentiss Pond. It's not like the Downers Grove Village Council happens to be, you know, north of 55th Street, and so therefore we take better care of north side people as opposed to south side people. It doesn't work like that. Again, it's an important thing to understand because these are really logical questions and they're why we have these hearings. There's
at least 3 people up here who live on the south side.
I'm glad all these things are coming up, but they're important to understand because you sit there and say, well, this is a pond that stores stormwater. It benefits the village because it does that. How come it would be handled differently than other ponds? The mayor alluded to one of them. SSAs are another one. There are differences to what these have in terms of structure and legal requirements on the backside of them. And I'm going to take a little exception to the water tower analogies, only in that the water tower, as the mayor said, there's a separate fund to that. but it's also about choices. Not doing a water tower isn't one of the choices. Doing one option A, option B, option perhaps C, D, E, and F that we haven't yet talked about tonight are certainly choices when we're talking about trying to manage the pond. Just not painting the water tower, just not maintaining the water tower is not one of the choices. They're way different. They really are. And I'm trying to have this complete blank slate approach to this thing, which is why we have these hearings. But let's try and keep the facts and the hyperbole down and the facts focused as much as possible. They're way different animals, way different parts of the village government, the village budget, and the method by which we decide how to fix stuff. So that said, I got a couple of questions that I'm going to need answers to at some point from staff. So if I could run down my list that I was taking notes. There was a slide that used a $150,000 figure, and it seemed like that same number was referred to in our information as $450 as a starting point for kind of comparison. I just want to make sure we end up with the right starting point budget-wise down the road.
A couple of years ago, we had $150,000 in the budget for this project. And then as we learned more, we increased that budget to $450 in hopes that that would be enough.
Gotcha, okay.
And then we did more due diligence and came back with the $950,000 price range.
Okay. Is the volume, once we start doing anything and we have this need perhaps to remove dirt, is that volume, is this analogous to some of the cleanup that has to be done, gas stations and such, where we have to basically keep going until we are clean? Or are we allowed to just take as much out as we want and then we have to deal with it?
It is not analogous to the gas station situation. Okay. This is not a no further remediation approach.
Okay.
This is just if we decide to remove it, you have to handle it in a certain fashion, and we could remove or not remove as much as we choose.
Got it. Perfect. This fish kill cause, I'd love to hear what we think that was. Did we kill them on purpose? Did we kill them accidentally? Was it low oxygen and low water levels? What happened there?
In 2005, summer of 2005, we had extreme heat and drought conditions, much like we're experiencing this summer. And the fish kill was due to low water volumes and high water temperatures. There was also a separate issue when we tried to kill off the algae. I'll have to double check the facts and the impacts of our attempts. That was a couple years later.
Okay. And then the last thing, I guess, just some more editorial from where my mind is starting from as I try and think about this. We have, several obligations that extend beyond your neighborhood. And one of them has to do with the fact that ultimately we have, back to my opening comments, this stormwater obligation. We're going to end up with a solution here that's an improvement. But then we have to figure out how to best arrive at a solution that we think is sustainable over time. And that doesn't predetermine anything. That may mean dredging. Maybe there's a modeling of this thing that says that dredging it every 20 years or every 30 years for X number of dollars is more sustainable and lower cost than some other option today that's less money today but takes annual maintenance, for instance. I don't know the answer to that, but a big obligation, at least from where I sit, is to handle the stormwater in a technically competent way and then do it in a way next, sort of one of the next criteria that's really important to me, is in a way that I think is most likely to be sustained most efficiently by the village. So if that's $10,000 a year to mow, or that's $1 million every 40 years, I don't know the answer to that tonight. I don't have the first clue as to which way it's going to go. But that's long-term sustainability. The predictable nature of the funding is a big deal because ultimately that's taxes. And we have to figure out how to control those, how to keep those growing curves as flat as possible. And that means trying to minimize future risk, minimize future unknowns, try and handle those things. We've done that on a lot of fronts. On stormwater, we've done it on water, and we're trying to do it on every decision we make. We did it recently with a fire truck. The decision about when to do what and exactly what the answer is has lots of components, and one of them is the long-term sort of sustainability and predictability of the future costs. So it's part of what's in my mind is a big piece of information I'm going to have to understand before I'm prepared to make any kind of decision. That's all I've got, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, just a couple quick comments. It appears everyone wants the dredge. If we were to do the dredging, will that address the smells, the algae, the flooding, and so on?
Yes, a dredging solution will address the issues but it's not a sustainable solution because over time this will silt in again.
Do we know how long before it would silt back in?
About 20 to 30 years.
And then if we were to do the dredging, or if we were to do the natural area, who actually would be maintaining that?
The village.
Would we have to hire new people to maintain it if we make it into a natural area because of plantings and some of the other stuff I saw in the presentation, not our presentation, but the proposal presentation?
No.
Okay. And then would one of the maintenance items or one of the uses or techniques that they would utilize if it were to go to a natural area, would that be an open burn, control burn that we see?
Not in this case, no.
Not in this case. Okay. I mean, I know that we did staff's projections on what the cost would be. Could we get actual costs? Could we do that? Are we on a timeline? I mean, one of the residents brought it up. I mean, I like that idea of getting the information if, you know, it's been this way for how many years. And if we were to hold off on doing the project for 3 years or whatever and build up a pot of money, if you want to call it that, to fund this project. Do we have a timeline for that? I mean, are we under a timeline to get this done this year, this calendar year?
No, there's no specific timeline. However, I've been here since 2005, and I've received 2 or more phone calls per year on this very issue. So it's a pressing issue, and it gets worse every year. To answer your question about could we go out and actually bid a dredging option, the answer, of course, is yes. There'd be more work involved. We'd actually have to prepare the bid documents and specs. Minor work compared to the scope of the project, but significant enough that it would cause more work for us to do, and if we're so directed, we could do that.
See, my thought pattern with that is the way we've done SSAs in other areas of our village. You know, I mean, if we allocate, if we know that it's going to be $600,000, let's just do easy math, $600,000 to do what we're talking about, a natural, what staff's recommending, a natural area, versus the dredging. If the dredging's $1 million, well, the $400,000 difference would be made up in an SSA and then determine whatever the areas. If it's homes that make up, that butt up to the land, or the water table, or water, the lake or the pond or the detention pond, or if you go on across the street, I don't know, but you know, that would be something I would entertain.
So
if staff's looking for any kind of direction tonight,
right. So
that's what I would do.
Looking for direction on the council, would you like us to put together an option that shows SSA funding the gap between this proposal and the dredging proposal?
Well, part of what, we'll hear what everyone else has to say, but what I heard Commissioner Durkin saying is one approach would be to come up with a very tight and reliable number for what the dredging would actually cost. I think that's going to take the extra work to make sure that this, I'm just guessing, to make sure this council is satisfied with it. And I sure know for a fact it's going to take a little bit more work to make sure that the residents are confident that the number really reflects what the cost is going to be. And again, I don't know if there are different, you know, if there's A dredging and B dredging and C dredging, that I don't know that. But
yes, there.
Of course there is. Of course there is. But I think those options are going to be worth the investment. That's at least my opinion. But then what I heard, the second part of what Commissioner Durkin was saying, I don't mean to speak for him,
that's fine.
is that once you have a good solid number, you know, okay, that's really what the cost is, then it would be the delta that would be subject to a potential special service area, which is, as Commissioner Barnett said, is the situation over at Prince Pond, where the neighborhood actually helps pay for their special area above and beyond what would be the normal case.
And don't forget brick streets. Prior to us taking them out, we have an SSA for brick streets too.
We do.
You really don't want to start that conversation.
No, I don't want to start the conversation, but again, it illustrates the council and village's staff to listen to the residents' concerns and desires and come up with a solution.
Right, right. But anyway, I was simply answering your question as to what data points you were looking for, not suggesting there was any path. But I think those are the data points that Commissioner Durkin was asking for. Commissioner Schnell.
I have a couple of questions about the dredging option, and then I have a couple of other questions. But the estimate that you gave of between 20 and 30 years of having to go in and re-dredge, does that include, is that just the central part of the lake, or does that include the channels? Because having had some experience with a lake house that had to be dredged, the channels seem to fill up a lot quicker. And, you know, it was dredged, and within 5 or 6 years, the channels were pretty closed. And obviously, there was no money left to do that unless everybody was assessed. So I guess I'd like to get a better understanding of, from Andy, of how you came to the 20, 30 year. I think, if nothing else, for the residents to understand too. There's a comment, someone made the comment of, they bought the house 6 years ago, and there was probably 3 or 4 feet in the channel by their home, and now there's 3 or 4 inches. That, an inch. Huh? It's about an inch. Okay, but that's kind of my experience. We happen to live on a channel, and the channels seem to fill up very, very quickly. So, when you say the lake would be dredged, it'd be 20, 30 years, I think there might be an expectation that it's going to be this pristine lake for everybody's going to be perfect, and it may not be that way. So I'm trying to get some more information, I guess is what I'm saying.
The estimate that we've got on the table right now is an estimate of what it would take to take the pond to about a 5 to 6 foot depth. Not 5 to 6 foot deeper.
Including the channels?
The channel we would take as deep as we could. It's relatively narrow. If we could get it down to 5 or 6 feet, we would do that.
Okay, but I guess what I'm asking is, even if a channel is 5 feet, it would seem, because it is narrow, it's smaller, and the silt is coming in, that's going to be the first point of contact, if you want to call it that, with the silt. So that's going to fill up quicker. So even though the projection is that the main lake, the bigger part of the lake, is going to be 20 or 30 years perhaps, we may have to, if indeed this is the option, we may have to go back after 5 or 10 years and open up the channels, because the channels are filling up much quicker. And therefore, you're going to have the smell and the dead fish and all that wonderful stuff that the people on the channel have.
Might there be some interim maintenance, and what would that cost?
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you, sorry, yes.
Yeah, no, I agree that the channel would fill up faster, and any dredging option that we would look at, I would still recommend we incorporate some sort of sediment trap or sediment forebay in that upstream area to make it easier for us to clean.
Okay.
So that we don't have to go in and dredge it, but we maybe would be able to clean some of the silt out easier.
And then I don't know if it's to you or to Dave, but as long as you're there, don't leave. At least the dredging I was familiar with is kind of the picture that's in this, and we talked about this a little bit today, where you have the big kind of amphibious thing that goes in and sucks it out and puts it up on the shoreline. Are there limited numbers of companies in this area that actually do that kind of work? And first question.
I just want to clarify that you're asking about the two main different types of dredging. One is the kind where you suck out the silt using a hose, and the other kind is using just dig it out.
Right.
Is that correct? Okay. I think Andy has some background on that.
Yeah, there are definitely 2 different types of dredging.
And one is more expensive than the other?
It can vary on what the situation is. The study that we had done, hydraulic dredging, which is basically where you suck the silt out and you have to put it in large bags and allow it to drain down before you were to haul it off, would be less expensive than what they call mechanical dredging, where you'd have to dewater the pond and get machinery in there to dig out the sediment itself.
Okay.
And the hydraulic dredging seems to be the least expensive option. The issue there is you have to have a place to put these bags. You can't put them in the floodplain.
Okay.
So that's a challenge.
So there's a challenge as to what you can do.
Correct.
And with either kind, are there a limited number of companies that, I mean, if we were to decide as council to go out to get a firm number, are we talking 1 or 2 firms that do this? I mean, and is that why perhaps the prices are so, the estimate of the prices are so high? Or are there lots of firms out there, and in this economy, they would all be more than eager to underbid each other in order to get the job?
There are a limited number of firms that do this kind of work. It's not something that your average contractor is going to try to take on. The reason the price is so high, though, is the trucking, having to haul the sediment to a landfill and pay the dump fee, and that's going to be pretty much the same no matter who does the job.
So that the fee, the cost is not necessarily, well, there is a cost associated with dredging, but it's more so the fact that this stuff has to be hauled into a truck and then taken down. And then there's obviously tipping fees and everything at the landfill to pay to get rid of this.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Andy.
Sure.
We actually, before us, have obviously the dredging option and a wetlands option. We have right now some information from, I think it's NCAP, which is is there a possibility, since they were the low bidder, of going back to them and asking them, and I don't know if this is even possible, but asking them to perhaps design it somewhat differently so that there are more are more open waterways, and that you have ways of filtering the sediment and stuff into the water, but that there are open waterways that are there all year round. And could we get an idea of maybe if we did that, how much that would cost?
The answer is yes, and it's sort of a spectrum between the naturalization option and the complete
Right,
dredging.
that's what I'm trying to get at.
And so there's basically a variety of options along that spectrum. So the answer is yes, and we can show you some options moving forward.
I mean, I personally would like to see that because, and I understand people want open water and it's beautiful and everything else, but if it's going to silt up, or if the channels are going to silt up and we're going to have to do this every 5 to 10 years, perhaps there's something in between that allows them to enjoy the water and the view of the water, but is not going to create some of the maintenance problems that could come from this. So that would be my, I'm not
Yes,
suggesting, but that would be my desire.
We can present information on that.
Okay,
yes.
that'd be great. Thank you. I have some questions on the other option, but I'm not sure we should get into that tonight. So if we eventually get into a discussion of that one, I do have some questions, but we don't need to do that.
Entirely up to you.
Well, I asked a lot of them, and they came up with answers that I still have questions about, but Dave and I can talk about that later, offline,
Okay, fair enough.
because I'd really like to see the other options.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't try to repeat what's been asked and said and so forth, but obviously we want to do what's right and what's best, not and cost effective, not just for the local residents, but for the village as a whole. And we wanted to do it right. One of the issues, if we want to be fair and just about all of this, is that the idea that we just took this over from a failed developer, and then there seems to be a lot of other storylines involved here. And I just want to get a good sense of, the role we played in creating this pond. Did we tell the developer to do it? Did we approve it? Were we always going to take this over, or was this a last ditch thing, or?
Yeah, the brief answer is that the original subdivision plans call for this pond to be improved to a certain park district standard, and the park district would then accept it. Then once the pond was constructed, there was a dispute among 3 parties, the developer, the village, and the park district, as to whether or not it met the original standards. Then there was litigation. The result of the litigation was that the village ended up taking over the property. Now, there are many, many details to that story. It starts in 1982 and goes through 1991-ish. So
The minute you say litigation, okay.
So I think that there was a resident here that explained it pretty well. She was correct. The story she told was right on.
Okay, so we definitely have a responsibility. It isn't something we volunteered to do because of,
Correct. We did not volunteer to take it. It was the result of litigation.
Okay, let's see. As been stated before, I'm going down the line, the deal with the water tanks and that extra cost there is the internal. We wouldn't do that. This isn't a we want the inside of our water tanks to look pretty. This is a necessity. And, if you don't like foul-smelling water, just wait until you have to drink it, and it's unhealthy. So, that's a necessity. So, it's not a real good comparison. Taxes-wise, there's a lot of people here tonight, $1 million for this, $1 million for that. We've had some very serious discussions up here about the cost of things and the effect of $1 million, and for the people who might be watching or saying, well, why not just do it? $1 million on a property tax runs out to about $40 per property owner. And like I say, we've had some serious discussions about adding $1 or $2 to a property tax. And in a sense, this is a cost of about $40 per property owner throughout the village. So keep that in mind as far as costs go. $1 million comes out to about $40. The SSA idea has been brought up. If there's something that we can work out, what's, like I say, the object of this is to do something fair. If, the residents have an interest in using this and making it useful and not just looking out at something they don't like, maybe there's some type of an arrangement we can pursue. Commissioner Durkin brought that one up. The mayor mentioned it too. Our duty is the stormwater. We got to take care of our stormwater. Animals, some people mention the animals around there. I think those animals are pretty much all around the village, from coyotes to possum to skunk to geese. As one of the residents mentioned, I live near a couple of ponds not too far from you, so I'm familiar. We get a lot of critters, and we have to put up with a lot of geese and a lot of geese excrement. So it's not just a localized issue, but I realize it is a special problem for your pond situation. Let's see. Another concern, residents were saying they want to enjoy the pond, and this is a situation, it was mentioned, it's dangerous skating on there. You shouldn't be swimming. As far as fishing, I don't know if that's something we run and encourage, but definitely not skating. Maybe whatever resolution we pursue, we decide upon, we need to have it safe. Because another thing I don't want to hear is years down the line, somebody skating where they shouldn't, or swimming where they shouldn't, and they're drowning or they fall in. That safety needs to be pursued there. And that's the same with anybody who lives near a pond. We need to use those ponds for what they were meant for. I think we do need to explore either option we take. If we took option A or option B, apparently we may have some other options. They're all expensive. They're going to cost a lot of money, and so I think it's worthwhile to pursue other options. See what we can cost. Let's go out and expend the effort to get some real estimates. Do the best we can. I'm sure when the staff says that they came up with it, it wasn't just a shot. We did some things at Barth Pond. Like I say, like the mayor said, there were intergovernmental agreements. So we have some experience in all this. It isn't just something pulled out of the air, but I think maybe it's worthwhile pursuing getting a better estimates, better. Let's expand the universe to get better ideas. And we just, I'd also like to know the effects of the long-term dredging. We're here today, maybe you're worried about for the next 30 years, then maybe you're out of there, you retire or whatever. There'll be a different council up here by then, at least there's term limits, so there should be a different term council up here by then. But we also need to think of the future and this constant, we'll dredge it in 10 years, we'll dredge it in 20 years. I think we really need to look at the long term and not kick any options down the road. So that's all I have. It's not a lot of direction for staff, but I think we do need to pursue some options. I don't mind expending additional efforts and costs to get this done right. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rankin?
I'm not going to mirror some of the same questions, but I do have one that I didn't hear an answer to. The pond, if it's dredged, would they be able to ice skate on it, or is it because there's running water through there that it would never freeze?
We'd like the opportunity to talk about the impacts and requirements of ice skating on the pond. We just learned that tonight, so we took some notes and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay. I agree with a lot of the comments my colleagues have said. I do think we need to develop a plan for the future. I don't think we should just solve this right now and not think about the impacts of our decisions for later on. When we hear questions about Prince Pond and Barth Pond and this pond, to me Barth Pond is totally different because it's open to the public. there's parking lots, that people can come there and use that pond, everyone in the community. I consider Roby Pond a little more private, where you all get to take advantage of it because it's in your backyard. And I understand the concerns you've brought up, and I think the village is committed to solving your problem, and that's why we're here. So we all hear your frustration with the lack of things happening, but I think we're committed to doing something. It's just deciding what path we're going to take. I would like to hear more options about an SSA, similar to the way Commissioner Durkin was talking about that, and also if we could get some estimates after, if we went out to bid, if we could get estimates of how it would impact the residents, so we could have a better idea of what we're talking about. Sorry, I was writing, there's so many comments here. I just want to make sure I have my questions answered. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Newstead.
Thank you, Mayor. It's clear that the village is now responsible and has been responsible for this pond for a number of years, and we have maintained it. We've tried different options with aeration. We've tried to help the neighbors with fish kills, with the algae issues. We've heard those concerns, and now we're at a point where we have to fix it for not only what's going on in the pond for those items in the aesthetics, but also for the stormwater concerns. Our job is to fix this pond and make it better, both for stormwater and make it better for all of Downers Grove to enjoy. I think we can all agree that the pond currently is in poor shape, but our job is also to make and find a way that is financially responsible to repair this pond. I've heard tonight that one of the issues is maintenance of the pond, dredging is an option, naturalization is an option. One of the long-term options that I've heard in the project that we've looked at tonight is addressed with the exact issue we've heard about maintaining an area, and that's the naturalization area, because the maintenance is less than those large expense items every 20 or 40 years, whatever it may be. To me, it seems to make more sense, going along with what we discussed tonight with our long-range financial plan, to have a plan and to have a process in place to maintain this area as a stormwater conveyance, which is what it was originally intended to be, as a retention pond. I've heard the word used tonight, lake. I don't call it a lake. I think it's a retention pond that was sold around some homes to improve their aesthetics, and that may have been the case back then when those homes were built and sold, but today it's a retention pond. And the Village of Downers Grove has done a lot of work to create and solve, not to create, but to solve the stormwater problems we have in our village, and we've done a lot of good work to do that. In my mind, this is an option that we can help improve the stormwater for not only this very specific neighborhood of the Roby and Valley View estates out there, but also the rest of those 400 acres on the south side of town. Commissioner Waldeck made a good point about the questions about animals and geese. I think probably if we went out there tonight, we would see some mosquitoes and we'd see some animals in that area too. The naturalized area may bring some different kind of birds. It may bring some unique species to the area that we didn't have before. I think this project will improve the stormwater conveyance, not only in that neighborhood, through the pond, but also to the south and the east. I agree with my colleagues that it's important to get all the options and get some of the numbers that have been asked for tonight by the residents and come up with that information, so when we do make our decision, we have all of the information along with you. One of the last questions I guess I'll ask for staff is that we're always very cognizant of staff time. We're in an extremely lean position now with our staff and our employees here, and this would be kind of given to the Public Works Department. Knowing how some of the other 12 action items line up, how would this bid process for both the dredging and maybe even a more specific design component for the naturalization line up with some of the other work that we have currently ongoing and planned for this year?
I'd like to work with our Public Works Department to get an understanding of how much workload it is just to get to a bid process for the dredging option, and then get back to the council on that.
I think that, we've had experience with bidding and coming up with numbers for dredging for other areas in town, so I'm pretty confident with the number that we've been presented by our staff. I trust that number, but if it helps make this decision one way or the other for the balance of the council, I think it's fine to go after, but we have to be very careful about our staff time and how much resources we can be putting into the design and beginning stages of some of these projects. So I really appreciate all the residents coming out tonight and your respectful comments. I think it's important to note that we did have a neighborhood meeting on this, and we have had conversations with Village Manager Fieldman over the last, I guess it was month or so. We had one-on-one meetings. So we did hear the concerns of the neighbors, and we have had individual council member meetings. We can't all meet together with the manager, so we've had individual meetings and heard about this project on a number of occasions. It's an important project in town, and I'm grateful that you all came out tonight to share with us your feelings and concerns. So thank you again, and thank you to my colleagues for all your comments.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I just have one point. I just want to ask Commissioner Newstead about the numbers we have with the staff, and I agree, you know, we can say that we can go with them and feel comfortable as a council because we've used their numbers before. But that's only for 5-foot dredging, right?
Correct.
Okay. The other thing is, I think where we'd have to really be cautious with, and we may have to extend staff time, and maybe this is something we look into next year and budget for it, is if we're going to create an SSA, we're going to have some hard number that we can rely on and go back to the residents and say, here's the difference between the two. And if we're off, you know, who's going to eat that cost? So I agree with what you're saying, but I would also caution you that if we're going to do an SSA, we better be very, sure of our numbers.
I didn't hear from any of the residents that an SSA was something they were interested in. So I think we need to get some more information out on that, and we can all get a little bit more information for the next time we talk about it. But
I'm afraid if it isn't an SSA, it's going to be a prairie area, and that's a natural area, and that's it.
Oh, hold on, folks. Hold on. Hold on. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Everyone was very quiet here, please.
I do agree somewhat with what Commissioner, this is not what I was going to say, but I agree with Commissioner Newstead in that I've not heard a lot of desires or suggestions from the audience that they would be willing to pick up the difference.
I don't even think it's even been discussed.
No, I don't either. That's why I think that perhaps we're putting the cart before the horse right now with that. I think perhaps if, and this is just my concern, if, again, I'd like to get an idea, again, in light with time constraints of staff, how much, if we were to go to NCAP and ask them to try to do something in between where there was open water for fishing or whatever it was, but it was a more sustainable project, how much staff time would go into something like that, and what would the cost be?
Not much staff time goes into that. In fact, we anticipated that, and we already started that work, so we will be able to turn at least option 3 around very quickly at no additional staff time or cost.
Okay. So it's not going to, that goes into, I think, with what Commissioner Newstead was saying, is concerned about our 12 action items and trying to get them done, but still trying to get something that perhaps might be more palatable to the residents if indeed the first option, which is dredging, would not work, and the other option, which I think they despise, perhaps would be the only other alternative.
We will be able to put together a couple of options that are between the proposal and the full dredging, and including a couple different financing options as well. And we will be able to tell the story and give you some cost estimates that we think should be good enough to make a council decision on. You know, if we want to go straight to bidding on a dredging option, I'd like the opportunity to talk to Public Works and see what that actually entails, and is it valuable? Is it, of course it's valuable, what is the cost of doing that, and can we get to a decision point without going that far?
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, to try to bring things home, I too, again, appreciate everyone coming out, spending your cool summer evening here in Village Hall. I know you're just here because this is a cooling center, right? That's why you're here tonight? But thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your comments, your thoughts. Obviously, there's a lot to think about. To me, this is primarily about, well, it's primarily about 3 things. But one is sustainability, because whatever we do, it needs to be sustainable. Commissioner Newstead mentioned it, and we talked earlier tonight about a long-range financial plan. This is all part about having a long-range financial plan. It's all about sustainability. There are a lot of things that we have come up with, ways to make sure that they are sustainable. The water tower is one of them. That's a sustainable system. It will sustain itself. This situation here is not currently sustainable. So what we're talking about is how do we make it sustainable? That's factor number 1. Factor number 2 is, I would say, even before cost, is precedent. Unfortunately, this situation occurs more than we would like to. And again, let me emphasize, This pond is not a natural occurring event. This did not happen in nature. This was created because of a combination of a stormwater retention requirement and an effort to try to turn a lemon into lemonade by also making it a selling point by a developer. So it became a marketing angle. And it obviously worked. I've heard a lot of people comment tonight that they liked it and that's why they moved there. But this doesn't occur in nature. This isn't moving to the shores of Lake Wobegon. This was something that was created and doesn't exist in nature. The second part of it is our having to deal with it doesn't exist in nature because it did not come to us voluntarily. This isn't something the village decided, oh, we'd like to put this nice little pond in this neighborhood and oops, oh, now we haven't been taking care of it. This was forced upon us. So now we need to come up with a solution that is sustainable. And we also have to be cognizant of what kind of precedent we establish because that's the other thing that needs to be sustainable is how we treat this situation will impact how we treat other situations. And we need to be cognizant of that because we represent the entire village, not just this neighborhood. So it's always that balance between the neighborhood and the entire community. The people on the east and the west sides are also like to get some attention too. It's not just north and south. And the third one obviously is cost. We need to do this in the most responsible and prudent manner. And I think that's why everyone has said in one way, shape, or form they would like to make sure that they have reliable estimates as to what the cost of the various options are. I'm not suggesting that I have no trust in the numbers that have been presented by staff, but bidding something out brings with it a certain panacea of reliability, not panacea, you know what I meant. Panacea, I wish it was a panacea. That was a Freudian slip. It brings with it a certain aura of reliability that perhaps an estimate doesn't otherwise have. So what I think would be useful to have is, yes, if we can find out whether or not a true bid would bring us additional solid information about costs and particularly with respect to other options, I think that would be helpful. Number two, if there are other alternatives. I mean, right now we're talking about two and there's a potential third one. There might even be a fourth one, but one is to just simply dredge it and restore it to the way it was back once upon a time, although we all know that it will not stay that way. It will continue to go back into the state that it is right now over time that is intolerable, so that's not a sustainable solution. But if there are other sustainable solutions that might not cost as much, then that's obviously something that we should consider. And if there are other options, I mean, if you just Google alternatives to dredging, all sorts of sites come up, and I don't want to pretend to be a Google scholar, but there might be other options out there and technologies because there are, I would venture to say, probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of these man-made ponds across the country, and it's a problem that people face all the time, and maybe we can tap into some other solutions if there's something we haven't explored that might be sustainable and less costly. That might be worth doing without too much effort, but again, because this is a sizable project, and it's one that I fear is going to come up again in another segment of the community, and we're talking about a long-term sustainable solution, so I am not that concerned about making an additional investment of some reasonable amount of time and effort, because I see this as actually a bigger issue than just this neighborhood on many different levels. So I would be okay with that within reason, of course. But you'll have a better idea of what's reasonable after you've taken into account some of the things we've discussed tonight. I understand that, and if it's unreasonable, then so be it. One question was raised about what are some of the water quality issues, and I think the residents have a fair question about better understanding what is the quality of the soil and the water to the extent that we have that information. I'm not suggesting we commission any studies, but to the extent we have that information available to us, I think folks would like to have a better understanding of what do you mean bad soil and what is the water quality and should we be concerned? Because I think the answer is no, but I think there would be some comfort derived from knowing that, so that would be helpful. If there are better renderings of what this would look like, and I've seen you guys do CGI buildings pop up in 3 dimensions and fly around, so I know we can probably do a better job of some renderings for the neighbors here in terms of what this would look like if the plan that's proposed was actually done. I think that's probably a fair request, and we can look at that. And then the other issue is, what we are talking about options, and if one option would be, we can do it option A, we can do it option C, or you can do option B, but option B is going to mean some contribution on your part. That might be a possibility. There are other instances in town where folks have decided to do something above and beyond what the village was willing to expend, and they took that upon themselves for that delta. There's a precedent for that. That has been done. Somebody mentioned Prentiss Pond. There's the Prentiss Pond option here too. That may or may not be something the neighborhood's interested in. We've encountered situations where neighbors are willing to do that, and we've encountered situations where neighbors want it done, and when it's pretty clear that the village is not able to or willing to pay for it, they are not so interested in it. It sort of depends, but we're all about choices and options, and so to the extent that we can reasonably explore some additional ones without too much additional burden, I think that would make sense. I think it would help for whatever the outcome is in this situation, for everyone to understand what the options were, that they were explored, that they were listened to, and the reason why one was chosen over the other, whether you agree with it or not at the end of the day, it makes sense and has a rational basis behind it. I think that's probably all that civilized humans can ask for, right? Well, that's all I had, unless there are any other questions or comments. And I think now we can ask that question. What next?
Well, we've gotten a lot of direction here from the council on this discussion. We have about 13 or 14 questions that we'd like to respond to.
Well, then I must have left out two.
And we'll get answers to that. We'll also keep the neighborhood informed. I'll have a better understanding of how long it'll take us to get these answers. And like I said, I'll keep the neighborhood informed. I'll keep the council informed. And we'll docket it up for an upcoming agenda.
Thank you. And on that note, if there's anyone that hasn't already, if you'd like, and I'm sure this won't be too much work, you can provide us with your email address, and whether you live 100 feet or 200 feet or 400 feet from the property, doesn't matter where you live. If you'd like to be notified of the next time this is up for some discussion, just please provide us your email address. And it's an easy thing these days to notify anyone who's interested in this of when there might be another meeting or discussion or something of material interest to share. Would that be fair?
That sounds great. They can just email it to me, and we'll also send around a sheet later tonight.
All right. That way, whether there's legally required notice or not, anyone who's interested in receiving information about this can receive it. That's easily done. And look, there's even a clipboard. That's old school, but we can do it that way too. All right, very good. Well, once again, thank you for all the comments and the input and the discussion. And obviously, you've got a long to-do list in front of you. And I believe that's the end of the first reading.
It is, Mayor. Thank you.
Which then takes us to the mayor's report. And I have one item that I would just like to discuss as part of the mayor's report. And that, as was mentioned earlier, pertains to our efforts to work with ComEd with respect to the sustainability and reliability of electrical service in our community. We are now in that time of the year when we experience, as last year taught us, some pretty severe weather, and severe weather brings with it electrical outages. Last year's severe weather caused some unprecedented electrical outages, and that led to a town hall meeting, which was mentioned by Mr. Roble earlier today, in which we had senior ComEd executives come out during a town hall meeting in September, meet with us, meet with residents, and we presented them with a plan that identified some of the highest problem areas and recommended and demanded that attention be paid to them in order to enhance and maintain electrical service and reliability of service in Downers Grove. We have continued to work with ComEd and have been making periodic status reports in terms of what those efforts have been. They've been posted on our website. The update for this week's meeting is as follows. The two final equipment upgrade projects that are intended to reduce the impact of tree contact and severe weather on overhead power lines are still in progress. The first is the replacement of 2,300 feet of overhead cable on the far south end of the village. We do pay attention to the south side, between Main Street and Fairview. The second is an ongoing replacement of 3,600 feet of cable on the far northern end of the village, west of Highland Avenue. Now that the projects are wrapping up, but the weather is more demanding on the electricity equipment, staff here at the village is keeping an eye on outages that do occur and remain in regular contact with representatives from ComEd. I know there were some scattered outages over the last couple of weeks that we've heard about, and we have been in contact with ComEd about those. If the outages of similar frequency and duration continue to occur in areas where the equipment upgrades have been completed, the village will ask ComEd to submit additional plans for improvement. And we are planning another town hall meeting with ComEd, again for the fall.
September is our target date. We'll have more information shortly.
And I know part of that is because this is their very, very busy season with the weather and trees and whatnot. so that probably makes sense. So there will be another opportunity for both business and residential customers alike to meet with ComEd representatives. That's something that we'll be hosting in the fall, so stay tuned for that. All this information that I've mentioned, plus everything earlier, has been posted and made available on our website. That's all I had for the mayor's report. That brings us to item 10, which is the manager's report. Mr. Fieldman.
The village council meeting that was regularly scheduled for Tuesday, July 3rd has been canceled. That allows us to partake in some 4th of July activities. There will be 2 meetings in July, so no meeting on Tuesday, July 3rd, but the regular meeting scheduled for the balance of July will be followed. That ends our report, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Item 11, attorney's report.
I have no report, Mayor.
Terrific. Item 12, council member reports and new business. Commissioner Newstaff, would you like to start us off?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. With these current hot days, I think tomorrow's supposed to be up to 97. The village offers some cooling locations, along with the Park District, the Downers Grove Park District Recreation Facility, the Downers Grove Library, Lincoln Center, Village Hall, and the Police Department lobby are all official cooling stations, and folks can go there if they need to get out of the heat. Also, I just wanted to welcome formally, many of us attended the ribbon cutting and grand opening for the PGA Tour Superstore up on Butterfield Road. It's a beautiful store that I've only been to 3 times since they've opened. And it's going to be a great addition to our town. There is already a lot of great community support from the management there at the store, and I just want to welcome them and thank them for choosing Downers Grove when they could have gone pretty much anywhere they wanted to up and down the Butterfield corridor. So thank you to all the folks over there at PGA Tour Superstore. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Commissioner Rankin.
If you haven't heard, the 4th of July parade is going to go the wrong way down Main Street. It'll be the same route. It's just going to originate at Main Street and Grant Street on the north side of town and proceed south on Main toward downtown, ending at Warren Avenue. The parade begins at 12:45. And directly following the parade, there's going to be a free family concert in Fischel Park hosted by Downers Grove Junior Women's Club. So we hope you can come out. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Durkin.
I have no report, only to wish those a happy 4th of July. If you're traveling, be safe. And if you're celebrating your 4th of July, please be safe as well. And we'll see everybody when we come back on the 10th.
Very good. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick observation of interest to the Valley View folks, too. The construction area around there, well, I notice on Dunham, when you're making the turn before you enter the neighborhood, they're starting to tear that up, too. It's getting to be a little rough, which got me wondering when we plan reconstructions and we send out contracts, trucks have to go in and out, and I think there's, peripheral damage, you might say, in a lot of these projects. I don't know if we generally allow for that, but it might be a good idea if we don't in the future, so that, these turns in and out may not be the street that was designated, but, they need to take responsibility for that, too. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Schnell.
I have nothing because I assume you will talk about the party that's coming up this weekend.
Oh, what, is there something coming up this weekend?
I heard that there might be, so I just thought maybe you know that there were so many days, so many hours, and a couple of seconds until it happened.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Really?
All right, then I'll go right to it then. Well, June 21st, of course, is significant because it is the summer solstice, and it's also the official start of summer. But the most important thing is not any of that astrological stuff. The most important thing about June 21st of 2012, of course, is it's the beginning of Grove Fest here in Downers Grove. Rotary Grove Fest begins on June 21st and continues through June 24th here in Downers Grove. The largest block party around will be in downtown Downers Grove, and it is exactly according to the official clock, 1 day, 2 hours, 28 minutes, and 24 seconds from now. So we'll be looking forward to seeing a lot of friends and neighbors at Grove Fest over those days. It's always a good time, and the weather promises to cool off a little bit, so it won't quite be so stifling. Everyone can come out and have a good time. And if you have too good of a time and eat way too much funnel cake during Grove Fest or some of that stuff they have over in the beer garden, then what you can do is, of course, wash off all your sins and make your body healthy again by participating in the Downers Grove Park District 5-miler, which is going to be run on Sunday morning, June 24th. And they've actually taken off the 10-mile part of it. It's just a 5-miler now. which of course I was devastated because I was going to actually do the 10 mile this year, and now I just have to do the 5 mile. That's just not fair. So there'll be lots of things to do over the weekend here in Downers Grove. I know a lot of the not-for-profit organizations in town will be using the weekend as one of their main fundraisers. So if you get a chance to come on down and not just have some fun, but also support some of the not-for-profit organizations in town, whether they're selling water, or they have booths, or they're parking cars, or they're running a dunk tank, or whatever they're doing. There's lots of things that you can do to not only participate in, but help support your community. And let's see, the last thing is I'll just echo what Commissioner Durkin said, and that is, since we won't see anyone until afterwards, I wish everyone a happy and safe Independence Day. We'll look forward to seeing everyone along the parade route, and then in the evening, of course, during the fireworks display as we celebrate our nation's birthday. So happy birthday, America. And that's all I have. So at this point, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you again, and good night.